Hi, welcome back guys. This is your friend, the What If Guy, back with another fanfiction. This is the first part of What If Issei Got Heavenly Harem. Now before starting, please give this video a like, and subscribe to the channel if you want more videos like this. Now let's get into the fanfic.
Hey eyes, Irina looked sad. Issei didn't think there was anything sad about playing Holy Heroes, or whatever they agreed on calling it. Irina, she didn't move, so she was sad. I don't get why you're sad. Issei felt his head tilt a little but did nothing about it. He was confused. We are playing heroes, aren't we? The tomboy nodded slowly, before explaining, I'm moving to Europe and I don't think I'm going to come back. Do you have to go? Issei didn't want to see his only and best friend leave. I'll have no one to play with. Irina knew how Issei would feel. It made her feel even guiltier. She didn't like the feeling at all. Why couldn't he leave with her? I got it. Issei almost jumped at the sudden yell from Irina. Hey, eyes. She got a quick yes as a response before she continued. Can you convince your parents into going to Europe with us? I don't know, Iri-chan. His face downcasted as he thought of his parents' responses. For one thing, he only knew how to speak Japanese. He wouldn't even be able to communicate with anyone. However, it wasn't as if he communicated with other people besides his family and Irina's family. He didn't know why everyone always did avoid him. He wasn't some weirdo, was he? Do you think your family would even let me go with you? Yeah, of course. She couldn't think sad thoughts then because if she did, he wouldn't be able to go. She had to remain positive. Do you have to go, Iri-chan? Issei didn't want to leave the park they always played in. He didn't want to lose his happy memories there in Japan. He didn't want to lose his best friend either. Irina was silent for a while before she spoke again. I don't think I can. My father really wants to leave with me. She knew a little about the supernatural, at best. She knew her father hunted all the baddies. Since she was his only child, she knew her father would want her to follow her footsteps and would be super proud. And she also wanted to do that too. But at the cost of her friendship with Issei, she wasn't sure what to do. Her father always did say, things come with a sacrifice, but for a greater good and a brighter future. Her future with Issei would also be bright. She couldn't imagine him not at her side. But, I think he'll still let you go with us. Her father was a respect figure. Every time they went to the church, he was always bowed at and everything else that was respectful. She couldn't really remember what, but she wasn't lying. She was sure of it. Issei put on a smile and brightened up. Irina couldn't have lied to him. There was no way. Nevertheless, there was still a part of him that didn't want to leave. However, if it were for his best friend, he wouldn't mind at all. Let's go finish our game first. Come on, let's go kill the bad devils. Irina wiped her eyes and nodded vigorously. Let's. It was some number of hours after midday and a few till dawn. They were still playing until Irina's parents came by to take them home. Irina-chan, Issei-chan. The mother smiled gently as they ran together, racing each other to the car. Ima beat you, Iri. Issei began to pull forward and was breathing heavily. No, you're not. Issei's legs were started to give way, and Irina took advantage to run past him. For one thing, Issei's family was a mundane family. They were no exorcist of sorts, no magic users, they were normal down to the roots. However, Irina's family contained many exorcists and were rather famous in their work. Consequently, for Issei to almost match Irina, who just began some basic training, that was rather astonishing. Not so much an arrogant sense, but nonetheless, a boy with no training and a normal life could compete with their daughter. That boy could make a fine exorcist and suitor, if only he could with them. They both carried themselves with childish heroism and were the best of friends. The parents found it hard to part them. Hey, Papa, Mama. She pulled them into a big hug as a loving greeting. She let go and jumped up and down. It was kind of odd. The parents were sure that the last run had drained her energy. Can I come with us to Europe? Wah. The parents were speechless. They knew they should have seen it coming, but it was still shocking nonetheless. For one thing, they were going to pull a child from their parents if they didn't go. Irina's parents couldn't imagine Irina leaving without them. Do his parents know? At this Issei answered, no, not yet. But, Imago asked them. His innocence made the parents retract on their statement, of it being unlike that he would be able to go. The parents honestly had a hard time choosing whether to break their hopes or not. To break them, it would bring to the harsh reality and away from their child delusions, or let them keep their innocence. But, for all they knew, Issei could go with them, even despite their own thoughts. Okay, what are you waiting for? Let's get a move on. Yeah. The two kids cheered together and jumped into the car. Mrs. Shido shot Mr. Shido a glance. While it was disapproving or not, he didn't know. She got into the car and listened to the children play some sort of game. She smiled gently, with an underlying sense of sadness. She couldn't find it within her to break it to them either. It was very unlikely that he would be able to go. This is your stop, Issei-kun. Irina's mother noticed that weren't paying attention, even after she said her statement. She really didn't want to break them up, but it was now or never. Never was never an option. Hey, Issei, she spoke louder to gain his attention. We're at your house. Issei him frowned slightly before smiling. Okay, I got it. I'ma go ask my parents. He hopped out the car and ran towards his front door, where his parents were waiting since they heard the car pull up in the driveway. Issei smiled as brilliantly as he could and stared at his parents. Then he mustered the most cutest and undeniable voice he could gather before speaking. Aka-san, Adu-san, can I go to Europe with Irina? The parents of Issei looked at each other. Both their expressions held different emotions. The father held forged serious and the mother held a worried look. No, the father's tone was gravely serious, and first time Issei has ever heard him speak in such a way. But it's the same answer, Issei. As the male, Masaru, spoke, Issei's mother, Megumi, bit her lip and worriedly looked back and forth between them. Issei turned to the ground and let his hair overshadow his face. Got it. From there, he mourned his lose and trudged himself in his house, to his room. She worried for the both of them. It was his first time acting such a way because parents do regret what they do and how. For the both of them, they were still learning on how to raise a child. Whether they were doing something wrong or not, they would not know. Being without other family did have its downfalls, especially when it wasn't voluntary. Masaru, don't you think that was a bit too harsh? I'm sorry, the fishing rod just came to mind and I just spoke. I didn't mean to be so harsh. Sorry. Masaru looked away. It wasn't manly to show tear, now was it? But still, he did need to get the answer straight. The clouds ahead rumbled, signaling a storm coming. I just hope he doesn't change. He already doesn't like fishing, you know. Megumi started to head inside. Right, whether it was to the first, second, or both parts of her speech, she didn't know. She could only hope it didn't affect the whole family's relationship. However, when she went inside the house, she saw his lips move but didn't hear his voice. Sorry, crack. The storm started with a spectacular entrance. Sorry. From there he headed inside his adobe after waving off the Shido's car. Issei was home alone since his parents left him alone. Even still, they wondered if it was okay to leave the child home by himself, especially at his age. He began to leave the door and spoke to no one in particular. Adu-san, Aka-san, I'm going to the park. The park where I played with Irina. The name, after I think about it, was rather girly. Pictures of Iri-chan flashed in her mind. He did have girly eyes and wasn't able to take baths with him. But that could be because of the Christian things or whatever. Eyes-kun, isn't that? Iri-chan. Wah. He pulled me into a big hug. This is going to be the last time I see you, Eyes. I want to have the most fun ever. Girls don't act this way. I'll ask him later. Let's go. It was getting down by the time they stopped. Irina and Issei were just sitting in adjacent swings, sitting in peaceful silence. It was odd for youth-filled children to act in such a way. Hey, Iri-chan. Issei groveled his feet into the ground to stop his steady swinging. He stopped his swing and looked my way. Nini, Irina, are you a girl? Yes. After all, Irina thought that Issei always knew. Oh, I knew I was just what? Issei fell from his seat on the swing, in latent surprise. Since when? Moo. Since forever, Baka Eyes. Ha. She laughed at his face. It was cute with confusion. But, at the same time, she knew it would be the last time she would see it. The Eyes, will you miss me? For a moment, Issei sat unsure of the answer, and Irina in turn feared what his answer was going to be until he smiled brightly. Of course, even if you were a girl. I may miss you so much, Eyes. She jumped atop him with tears. I don't want to leave. I don't want to leave, Eyes. I don't either. Issei stared at the sky with wanting. He could only wish he could go with her, or she. It felt odd changing he into she. Or she goes and stays with him. But there was nothing neither of them could do. I'm going to really miss you, Irina. Issei, Irina. It was her mom calling her. Issei, Irina. We're going now. She sounded as if she were in a rush. I'm sorry, but it's fine, Iri-chan. Issei smiled calmly and waved. I don't think you should keep your mom waiting any longer. Yeah. Irina sprinted and took one last look as she waved. I'll never forget you, Eyes. I'll never forget you too, Irina. Issei kicked yet another rock in his path. He was bored beyond his comprehension. His smile from before was set in a firm line. There was nothing for him to do. He didn't want to go home and face his parents. However, he was pretty hungry. His stomach growled in agreement. Even so, he really didn't want to go home. He sat on the bench and watched all the other kids play. He wished he had more friends to do the same thing, to play some kind of ball game, talk about many random things, or even just to swing or chill with, whatever that meant. He wished he had friends to eat and drink with. He took a seat on a nearby bench, hoping the growling would stop. Young one, perhaps you're hungry. A woman, a beautiful woman where even the word beautiful had no justice for her beauty, came up to Issei. It made Issei swallow. He wasn't supposed to talk to strangers. However, he had to admit she looked really pretty and had a sugar-sweet voice, one that matched the heavenly beings Irina called angels. That much he knew. Irina even said they were the most beautiful people you could find and the most selfless people too. Even still, he would still follow his parents' warning. After all, the last time he didn't, he broke the fishing rod. I'm fine grr, he blushed. He felt so weird talking this woman. He had no idea how to describe his feelings. They were just numbed and awkward. She took a seat next to Issei on the fine-grained wood bench. She held a steaming sweet bun to his hands. I hate to see such a child in need of food, so please, take it. Her hands felt smooth, gentle and warm. Whether if it was from the hot bun or if it was naturally hot, Issei had no idea. But I don't have anything else to give to you. Seeing a smile on a lovely child is enough for me. Her smile made something in him flutter. With that flutter brought a smile to his face. Is this all right? She ruffled his hair. Yes, of course. She smiled with heavenly warmth. I'm Gabriel. Just call me Gabriel-chan. How about it? Ni. Her cute pose made him. He's never done that from a girl. Mooney's arena. She struck her tongue out and the fingers, attached to her left hand, were taking a V shape under her left cheek. What's your name, young child? I'm Hyodu Issei. Nice to meet you. He felt oddly but really happy, even with one conversation with her. Nice to meet you, Issei-kun. I mean, can I call you Issei? The smile from her face stayed planted, engraved almost. Yes, of course. She looked at her watch and frowned lightly before returning to Issei. It seems I got to go. That also made Issei frown. Will you be here tomorrow, too? He really wanted her to say yes. Otherwise, he would be all alone again. She paused from her action of leaving her seat and looked at him. Her light frown became a gentle smile. I think I may. Yada. He jumped from his seat and hugged her leg. See you tomorrow. They took their separate ways. Mommy, I met a pretty girl. Her name was Gabriel. He hugged his mom after entering his home. She was really nice. She gave me food when I got hungry. That's nice. Megumi was somewhat afraid as to where he went or if he was going to come back. Nevertheless, by looking at him now, none of it mattered. Only that he was happy. And she could be any happier. Aka-san, can I go back to the park tomorrow? Can I? She said she'll meet up with me again. He squirmed a little as his mother picked him up from the ground effortlessly. Only if I get to meet this Gabriel and thank her for making you happy, Ni. She smiled as he cheered. You hungry for your favorite? The soupy Hyodu special. Oh, yes. The father at the table smiled behind his late-night newspaper. There was nothing to worry about either. There's going to be real food. He smirked under his paper as he knew his wife could most defiantly hear him. Baka. A flying pan hit Masaru in his forehead. Direct hit. KKKOOO. Fatality. Those phrases went through Issei's mind from his video games or some he watched somewhere before. Issei laughed his parents' playfulness. Soon, the whole family joined him. Their family, jolly with tight closeness because of just one little boy. Now I really wish to thank this Gabriel-chan, both parents thought. Issei ran towards the park, dragging his parents with both his small hands. However, after a while, he got impatient and went to run off. Issei, slow down. You'll fall. Though it has never happened, Megumi, his mother, couldn't help but worry every time he ran at such a speed. But he only said those words and slowed to a speed-walking pace. He always argued with such words, but it held no conviction. Once they made it to the park central, Issei began to search for Gabriel. However, all he saw was a girl. The girl had the same exact hair and everything, but Gabriel was an older girl. Not that small girl who looked to be around his age, and who waved and smiled at him. Issei-kun. She ran up to him. He was stood still for a moment before he regained his bearings. Gee, Gabriel. He was confused. Wasn't she like, old? That's me. Her cheery voice rang in Issei's ears. She moved up close to Issei and whispered, I changed. But, SHHH, let's keep it a secret, K. Issei didn't know why, but his cheeks flared with heat when she moved really close. He only felt this way after he realized Irina was a girl. And it wasn't because he was scared of cooties or anything. Something about them both threw him off. Okay, but my parents came by and wanted to say hi. He moved to the side to allow Gabriel to see his parents and his parents see the famous Gabriel. Gabriel saw a woman wearing a pink blouse and a modest pink and white checkered skirt. By her side was a man who wore a simple white tee with a design of a weapon of sorts and dark blue jeans. Masaru smirked and began to approach the two children. So this is the little lady who took care of my son when he went out. She's cute, I got to tell you, Izurk. Masaru's wife elbowed him and his smirk disappeared along with most of his pride. Don't mind him. Good afternoon, Gabriel-chan. How are you? Hyodu Megumi smiled at the girl and crouched down to get closer to the girl who had otherworldly beauty, especially at her age. Good afternoon. I'm having a great time since Issei-kun is here. She cheerfully and respectfully answered Megumi. Thankfully, Michiel had let her take a break again. She would have felt devastated to break her promise to Issei. She even swore on her pinky. Well, how about we have a picnic as a thank you for watching over my son, Ni? She flicked her wrist at her husband and Masaru quickly ran for the car, both in slight fear and for the materials. Haha, I didn't know we're having a picnic. He stood by his mother's leg and hugged it. His eyes shining, he looked up to his mother. Are we going to have the Hyodu sandwich special too? Yep. Issei smiled happily as his mother rubbed his hair. At the same time, Gabrielle stood looking at her own hands. Are head pats really full of such love? Gabrielle was never head patted by her father. Mitchell never gave her them either since she's seen other older children do that to the younger ones. Moo, I'm going to tell him to give me one with all the hard work I've been doing. She snapped out of thoughts when Issei called out to her. Hey, Gabrielle, hurry up. The food will get cold. She looked towards Issei and saw him waving with glee along with his jolly family. Sorry, she ran for the hills, beneath some shade and next to her friend's family. Which one do you want first? A sandwich, some fruit or some soup? They're all really tasty. She observed the food with slight awe. I don't know which one to choose. Eyes. It was scanning the food when such childish seriousness. In heaven, the food was good but there wasn't much variation. Not that she really minded. Which one do you recommend? She looked at his face. I'd say the fruit, cause it's best when fresh. He smiled her way and Gabrielle just had to return the smile. Yes, that sounds good. She looked at the fruit salad. I haven't had some pineapple in a while. Last time she had it was when she visited her fellow Metatron. He shown her his skills as a ninja, faster than her eyes could see. He cut it into many small pieces. However, he had said he could only do it on a small scale. Thus, she cheered him on. Has he mastered it yet? Okay, the fruit it is. She hummed her way to the fruit and took a plate of various fruits. Using a fork, she stabbed a piece of pineapple. This is really good, she said after finishing her piece. Or a lot of hard work. How did Akasan make this? I dunno. Ask Haha. But it was really good, wasn't it? It was really good. She nodded vigorously then returned to eating. Haha's cooking is the best. He stuffed another apple slice into his mouth. After finishing tasting everything, Gabrielle realized something. She had yet to give thanks. She turned to the whispering adults. Akasan, I really like your food and W would like to thank you for the food. She folded her hands and began remembering her Japanese manners. Then, she bowed on her knees, making sure not to spill her plate. She turned to her husband first. C2-san, she's a nice and polite girl. After saying her piece to her husband, she turned back to Gabrielle with a smile. Well then, you're welcome, Gabrielle-chan. I'm glad you like my food. Don't go wandering off too far. Megumi couldn't help but dote over the two children. She could only hope they didn't get hurt or at least not too much if at all. We won't, her son yelled back, confident that he would. He never did. They'll be fine. They always were, weren't they? Masaru embraced his wife from behind as he referred to Irina and Issei. It's natural to worry, but I hope that girl does heal him. Yeah. Hey, Gabrielle, why did you change? He pointed out what he was wondering the whole time. After they got bored of everything on the playground. Gabrielle wasn't too sure herself. I just thought it would be better this way. She smiled cheerfully and made a peace sign by her cheek again. Issei felt his cheeks flare again but ignored it because for one thing, he still didn't know what it was or meant. Does that mean you know magic or something? Oddly, he began to remember a dream he had not too long ago. That dream contained that wannabe scary dragon. Eat that D-Drag-san. Even though he had no clue what that name meant, but he knew that dragon could also summon fire like magic. After a while of debating within her head, she answered, yep. She felt some sort of power in Issei. Perhaps she could tell Michiel and see if she could watch the child, or even get him to join heaven. That's so awesome. I only wish Irina was here to see it. The random blurting of Irina's name got Issei to remember something. Doesn't that make you an angel? Irina said they were super nice like Gabrielle, and grumpy old man D-Drake did say something about Gabrielle and angels, but he was far too busy playing with the fire. What could he say? It shined, it sparkled. What kind of boy could say no to it in their dreams? Besides, old man D-Drake was far too boring, and too busy trying to scary him. Even Haha is scarier with her cat apron. How did this child come this kind of conclusion so fast? WSSSH. The tree shook with the wind as a piercing noise, one so high a human couldn't pick up such a sound, resounded throughout the area. However, it disappeared in an instant only to be replaced by SHHHKK. Replaced by that almost meaningless noise. Gabrielle's face changed after she realized what she could have done, what she should have prevented. Issei stood obvious to the pain, since his body hasn't registered the pain by ultra pain killers. Such a powerful mechanism the human body was. Gabrielle, he took in her horrified look. It looked really misplaced, and it made him sad to see it on her face. It reminded him too much of his last day with Irina and her face. He suddenly spat out blood, but only saw such things on TV. It happened again. He still didn't know why. Issei-kun, why Her facade disappeared and her older yet more elegant features were starting to replace, minus her wings and halo. He followed her eyes down her body. He felt the wanting to rush out his throat. The painkillers be damned. The slight throbbing he felt vanished once he saw the gaping slash in his body. It made him feel faint and lightheaded. He barely recognized that he was just mindlessly watching his red fluid. He was beginning to forget the name of the fluid. Or was it red water? Gabriel watched him fall to his small knees, his adorable face soiled. It caused a sudden growth of to pour out. She began to move closer, her hands shaking as she raised them. Spad. Boosted gear, divided by. Issei couldn't see anymore. Hello. Where was he? Where was Gabriel? You're dying, child. I moved you here. A child shouldn't feel such a pain. After all, Issei heard the voice coming from everywhere, even though tears threatened to fall from his face. He spoke with an innocent voice with a hint of worry. Is Gabriel okay? If he was dying, did he, at least, somehow, save his new, yet nonetheless, precious friend? Even the almighty D-Drag found it hard to speak to the child. He lied, in a good way. He could smell the energy that radiated off the girl before the senses of the boy vanished. She would be safe no matter what happened. He let his tears fall as he fell to his knees. That's a relief. He moved his lower arm to his face and began to wipe away at his non-stop flow of tears. But I want to SCO Aka and Oadu. I want to them to please BHH happy. And don't BBS sad. I want to say GG goodbye and thank you. Ooh. D-Drag grunted quietly within the shadows. He wondered when was the last time he saw such a death or the death of a child. D-Drag only regretted being awoken. He didn't need to see all that. He didn't need to hear all that. He definitely didn't need to lose a tear that dripped down his metaphysical face. He was a heavenly dragon, damn it. He certainly didn't feel like one. With Rainier, divided by. What? Wasn't the small girl a small girl? Whatever, it didn't matter, she would kill her too. She was just a normal human, though she faintly reminded her of a certain someone. A lot. Still, it didn't matter who she was. That made her smirk, rather evilly. No, she didn't have to kill her. She could let the sadness push the girl to depression. Let her die a sad woman. After all, it was morally wrong for her, such a woman, to fall in love with a child. And he was totally oblivious to the fact that she was a totally grown woman. The spear she made to stab the child was infused with anti-healing magic properties. She only used that spear for assassinations. After all, what was the point if the person, usually human, could heal somehow? It could only be countered by the only species to revive, devils. Not even a vampire's bite could save an individual. It was too slow. She had to hand it to Cockabule. His lessons were paying off. It would only be a matter of time until she reached Azazel and her fourth wing. Whatever. She teleported off, hoping she could wait for that oblivious child of a devil. She didn't really care for his name, to get that nun. What was her name again? Rainier forgot. Either way, that nun, who the older than he let on devil had his sights on for whatever reason, was going to help her. His contract with her be damned. It was her job to make sure that none, her name not needed, made it to the city she was currently resided, Ku. However, it wasn't part of the contract that she take but that didn't matter to her or her group of fallen angels. Even though it was very recent that she unleashed her, it had endless possibilities to what kind of injuries it could heal. With such possibilities, she couldn't let such a fall into the hands of the enemy if she could help it. And if she could help it, she would take it all for herself, allowing her to get stronger, allowing her to capture the eyes of her most beloved, the governor himself, Azazel. Rainier thought herself to be a patient woman. She would let the devil take as long as he wanted, only if he held his side of the contract. After all, a patient woman got what they wanted, even if it had to take 13 years. Forest divided by. It was pouring everywhere. Was just everywhere. Gabriel could only stared with wide eyes. She, one of the top 4 angels in heaven, was unable to save a single child. It hurt to know she could have prevented such pain. She herself never felt such a pain or had such a wound. Something about that light spear made her unable to heal the wound. She knew the magic of almost everything. It made her frustrated that she could do nothing but have a seal close the wound. She even doubted that it would heal all on its own. However, a young child, only but a small, teensy fraction of her age, was feeling such pain, was inflicted such a wound. It wasn't right. It went against everything she and her brethren worked for. There was no way to revive the boy. If only her great father was still around, he would surely turn this boy into one of her brethren. He had angelic innocence that was every fiber within him. She'd grown attached to the boy. It was just something about him. The only sin she could think of that the boy had was that he wasn't born as an angel in the first place. At first she thought it was the smile on his face when she first saw him in a church, watching from up above. However, it wasn't quite that, rather something else she couldn't put her tongue on. She didn't know what it was that caused her to be a guardian angel for almost 3 years, observing his every move. Maybe it was the fact that it was her father's will for her to meet the boy. After all, she was her father's messenger to certain people. Would I be able to separate a child from their parents? The answer for her was no. She couldn't face them. She couldn't let the parents of such a lovely child be sad. The child wouldn't want that. He only wanted to strive to be what his parents wanted him to be and make them happy. In turn, he would be happy. After all, that's how she felt to her father. Thus, she became the famous messenger of God, one of the 4 archangels of heaven. She even once sent cards. The cards. That's it. The cards. The day before, Michael held a meeting, the reason why Gabriel had to leave the day before, about finishing a prototype of the new revival system for new angels. However, they had yet to test such a thing. After all, they were no scientists, and kept closely to themselves after the death of her and her brethren's dear father, thus having very little if any knowledge of new technology that may or may not help them. The fall of the 5th level, the Grigori, didn't help in the least either. With her resolve steeled, she picked up the bloodied child and released her wings, signifying her readying to go to heaven. I will save you. Heaven divided by. Welcome back, Gabriel. Michael stood before the glowing light that only Gabriel could create. Each angel had their own shade of holy light that only they could create. And Gabriel's was a light that reminded Michael of their father, a level of yellow holiness not even Michael, the strongest of angels, could produce if he tried. However, he wasn't expecting the bloodied child in her arms. And Michael, her voice cracked slightly, can we test the card on this child? Aye, please. Her voice was weak and so unlike her usual bubbly self. For one thing, the tests from before the first real prototype ended with a much different outcome than it should have gotten. It gave the church the power to brand Excalibur wielders. Michael regretted misplacing his trust. It ended terribly, and with a certain blonde boy falling into the hands of the devils. Do you believe this will work? Michael didn't want to doubt his sister, but the trial that took place many years ago made him think so. I have to. The amount of resolve in her voice took him aback a bit. So did the tears he just noticed. Just how did the child that was barely a meager fraction of their age affect his dear sister so much? Okay, place him over there. He pointed to a bed that was similar to one in a doctor's room. I'll get the card. Do you have any card in mind specifically? He waited silently by the door of the room. Just grabbed them all. Gabriel was barely functioning at that point of time. She was trying her best to at least slow his bleeding and whatever else she could manage. Got it. For his sister and the child's sake, he hoped the cards worked. Once Michael turned his back and closed the door, a green light swallowed the room. Once it watered down, Gabriel noticed it came from a gem on Issei's hand. Wah, do you want to help this child, Angel? This voice. It was. Drag. Answer the question, Angel. There are only moments before even my power isn't enough. Why yes, of course. She did bring him to heaven after all. However, she was quite puzzled. Since when was the infamous just but a small jewel? Why? Even though she was hesitant, she still moved her hands towards the radiating gem. He ignored her question and continued his instructions. A glowing object the shape of Yang or Yin appeared over her hands, floating. It felt, for the lack of a fitting word, nice or Yang. His soul. Gabriel was flabbergasted. A soul was the literal personality of an individual. No wonder she felt such a similar aura to Issei's own aura. However, unlike the usually aura from the boy, it felt purer, like Drag took. Again, he ignored her. Time waited for no one after all. Onto the card, then onto the gem. Easy as that, I'll do the rest. It would be easier for soul to bond to the card than rearranging the soul than having to rearrange the soul and shove a foreign object to where it didn't belong. After all, he did have a host who once was reincarnated into a devil, allowing him to fairly study. Gabriel, I've retrieved them. Michael strived into the room, oblivious to the new presence. Which one is the strongest? Michael stood shocked. It was Red Dragon Emperor, Drag, awakened so early. Much earlier than ever before by his prior knowledge. I think it's the... She hoped she wasn't wrong. He dared people to call him a... Drag only hoped he wouldn't have to deal with such madness. Being a joke. He, one of most strongest beings, a joke. Madness. Following the dragon's directions, Gabriel cautiously placed the curved droplet-shaped object onto the card. Michael and Gabriel watched in awe as it slowly melted and covered the card in green liquid. Then Gabriel moved it over the slightly glowing gem. In a flash of green radiance, the blindly glowing card vanished. As much as it pained him to say such, he would only allow for Gabriel, the one angel his host liked, to command his host. I got it. She focused her angelic powers through her hands with all her faith. She just had to let this boy live. She couldn't let him down. Gabriel found that she couldn't send magic into the boy anymore, causing her to blink in mild confusion. Did it work? Yes, of course. With tears beginning to stream down her face, she began healing her. Her radiance actually allowed for her to heal his wounds. It made her smile brightly. I'm glad.
RRRGGH. Child Issei groaned lightly as he slowly wiped his eyes. His arms felt really dull and so did the rest of his body after he regained his sense of feeling, though rather slowly. Why, the last thing Issei remembered was, it took a moment to regain his memories. The last thing he remembered was the trees that surrounded Gabriel as her face was twisted in fear and the blackness he couldn't see anything in. However, he felt himself grow sad at remembering Gabriel's face. While he knew it was fear, he knew it was fear for him. Rather, it was fear of what was happening to him. That was the only thing he could wrap his mind around. While he knew it was a variation of fear, he knew it wasn't technically fear. It was some emotion he knew he hasn't learned yet. However, that realization didn't help that he had caused the saddening emotion, somehow, in a way. Or the fact that he can't remember ever coming to the divine place he currently resided in. He slowly began to realize his surroundings, and it made him think he was dreaming. He was literally surrounded by clouds, yet they did not give way to everything atop them. He himself above added to that fact. Within the cloud room, there were no objects but the really soft bed he was on. It felt as if he were literally surrounded by clouds, as if his bed swallowed everything but his head. It was bright, like the sun in the sky bright, yet that fact did not bother him. No, rather, he felt empowered by the light. And even without any source of light sources that he knew of, the place lit where even all shades of darkness was chased out, eternally. Moo, that noise. He felt weird from the sound. He couldn't understand why though. He tried to shift, but he was snugly trapped in something warm. If that noise was there, that meant there had to be a person. He hesitantly started, tensely, is someone there? Something behind him shifted. So perhaps it wasn't just the heavenly bed that was making him feel so great. Morning, Michael. The rather familiar voice stopped suddenly and he was nearly shook off the bed. He heard the person gasp sharply before warm wetness hit his skin. Eyes, Issei, you're finally awake. He blinked multiple times after he remembered the voice. Gabriel-chan. Issei held himself up by his childlike arms. He looked at the blanket-clad woman before him. She was crying, but with a smile. It made his vision blur as he felt a burning sensation coming from his eyes. His nose was flooded by sudden heat and it led him to trying to wipe at his nose, fearing something would fall out. However, all was in vain. Yet it didn't deter him from trying anyway, for he wasn't acting but feeling, and allowed his body to do whatever in his stead. Nonetheless, the realization of her being next to him in this heavenly world made him think of the worst. Are we in heaven? Even after the being had told him she would be fine. She smiled, but he wasn't sure if in sadness or happiness, as every image he saw was blurred. Yes, we are. I'm dead. I died. This is the heaven Iri-chan always talked about. Aka-san, Aru-san, I hope you won't be mad at me. I'll be waiting for you here. Iri-chan, I hope you'll forget me. Issei smiled sadly because he understood that she would never ever forget him. At least, I'll see you here. You did say you would come here after all. Issei paused to barely see the sniffing yet beautiful woman wipe her tears and smile his direction. But, Gabriel-chan is here. That's not fair. Not fair. It's not fair. He couldn't see his surroundings anymore. His tears burned trails down his cheeks and made holes in the clouds that would close moments after, only to open again for more tears. Ugh. He hiccuped and hated the noise but didn't dwell on it, for it was matterless in the form of holy death. It's not fair. Issei kept wiping at his eyes, trying his hardest to stop the useless trail of salt water. Issei suddenly was pulled into an embrace. He looked up, trying his damn hardest to see her face with his forever flow of warm tears. He couldn't see it, but he knew Gabriel didn't want to die either. He couldn't help but to feel for her, along with the people mourning his death, or for the people who has died. Aka-san, Aru-san will be sad. It's okay, Issei. Really it is. She pulled his head deeper into the soft objects that threatened to swallow his head. When he began speaking, it made Gabriel realize he was mourning the fact that he died. She too would have mourned over his death, even with the small moments, when compared to her lifespan, of gentle vitality she genuinely had with him. I apologize for not understanding your matter of words. I really do. A hand went through his hair. That action, she unintentionally copied from his mother, managed to calm him into a sniffling mess. We're not dead. You asked if I was an angel, remember? He nodded as his heartbeat, chest quaking, and breathing began slowing and stabilizing. Well, guess what? She paused and knew Issei wasn't going to respond, and yet paused anyway. I'm your guardian angel. A vibration from her bosom meant Issei was saying something. She lifted him slowly from her. Sniff, you're really an angel. Like Iri-chan said. She smiled brightly. I've always have been. Angel was the last word Issei said before he succumbed to some sort of stress he never felt. She held him as she lured him deeper into his gentle yet sudden sleep. Her mind took her to Issei's previous words. I don't think it's fair that I take you from your parents or your beloved friend. However, I don't think it's fair that I took most of your humanity away. Gabriel placed him onto the bed as she too laid down. However, this time she had him facing her. She stared longingly at his face. She felt rather weird, but she just ignored the notion and pushed it into the depths of her mind. She slowly and hesitantly brushed away hair from his face with slender fingers. After, she wiped away his tears with a gentle flick of a thumb. She gently forced her holy aura into Issei. In turn, a golden halo appeared from over his head and 2 pair of pure white wings sprouted from his back. Father, was this your plan of peace? Was it your plan to give us your power, to bring the beginnings of stable peace? She was her father's messenger after all. She only had one mission, to fulfill her father's will. That will was forever peace for all races. She smiled as she related that her father's view of things that also corresponded with Issei's. They both saw 2 sides of a matter. However, how impossible, the notion of eternal peace didn't matter. It only mattered that the boy before her would definitely help bring to that peace. And with her by his side, that boy was her father's receiver, her, and more importantly, her first true friend. That boy was the first reincarnated angel in centuries, the fastest awakened Sekiryuite. That boy's name was Hayao Issei. He would bring her wish to life, even if that wish was lost even on Earth. About 2 days before Issei's awakening. Issei, Gabriel. It was getting late. However, Megumi couldn't help but feel that something was up. She went away from her husband. Issei, where are you? Eyes, I can't find him. Megumi yelled as frantically searched for him. Her eyes swelled with tears. There was no trace of the 2 children. Nothing. No trail, no camera feed, no blood. Nothing. While there was no blood, it didn't help that she couldn't find either of the 2 children. She fell to her knees on the harsh stone pavement. Her pink and white checked skirt did not protect her knees since it was forced up as Megumi fell in pure despair and came down around her. She felt a dull pain flash throughout her body, but that pain was nothing compared to the pain of losing her child. Her only child and last. Losing a child for a 3rd time. Her vision blurred, almost blindingly so, as she felt her head spin. Her world was like a wet painting being spun, losing color, shape, and meaning. It reminded her of the first time she had a child. It ended, tragically, a miscarriage. She and her husband knew they were ready for a child and really wanted it, and yet, no avail. Thereafter, she was determined to have a child, she and her beloved husband. From that moment on until her next delivery, they searched everything to gain the knowledge as to how to have the perfect delivery. Holding her husband's hand, she grunted as she felt her child leave the safe confines of her body. For a second time, again, she still failed. For a second time, unable to hold back her tears, she cried, not because she was weak-hearted but because she was strong for far too long. She was absolutely devastated. Her sincere effort was faced with yet another failure. 2 lives that could have been, never were. She knew she did everything right both times, yet her mistake, whatever it may have been, ended both lives that could have been her child. Sisters, even. It was about a year when she decided she wanted to try again. She was found to have a few number of eggs that could be fertilized, after a tragic accident that killed her brother. Her gland was to never mend, nor could it have been. Her hands grasped her husband as she felt herself warm with worries. Her husband smiled, tightening his hold. It'll work, he simply said. It has to, was what each other knew they were thinking. Thus, her son, her dearly loved son, Hayatu Issei, was birthed and showered with love. Yet, the regret of failing to deliver a child, moreover too, scarred her severely. Even to that day, she didn't want another child in fear of killing the could-have-been child that could have been hers. Nevertheless, it only furthered the fact that she failed to protect her child. He was nowhere to be found. She couldn't have felt more devastated. She wanted to barf, hurl, yell, scream, cry, sob, search till next day's daybreak, and yet, give up at the same time. Despite everything, she bitterly added. The last choice was fairly attractive, yet were so the others. However, she wouldn't dare. She couldn't do that to her beloved son, to her husband that also shared her fears and joy. Issei, she couldn't abandon him after all she has done, all her husband done along with her. She couldn't lose him after all she's done. Megumi, strong yet gentle arms wrapped around her waist. There isn't much more we can do. Even though his voice was strong and blunt, she knew it was for her sake. I have already contacted the police. So, let's go home. He stopped and strengthened his hold and rubbed her head with his chin. At least until tomorrow, he added as his wife leaned back into him. Nesaru. Aye. She covered his arms and hands with her own, fondly rubbing them as her tears fell at a quickening rate. I feel the same. She felt something wet fall upon the back of her neck, sliding slowly as it was absorbed into her skin. He was crying right alongside her. As always, you'll never be alone. Heaven, last chapter's end. Issei woke up without a shirt and with a weird sensation on his back. It was felt as if something was sticking out his back, yet it felt as if it was always there and really delicate. He struggled against Gabrielle's body in vain, trying to stretch. Oh no. Gee, Gabrielle, are you awake? She snuggled closer to him as her mouth opened to yawn quietly. She took a few moments to blink repeatedly since she wasn't used to awakening in such a comfortable position. Just a moment. She stopped blinking and took in the face of the newly revived angel, the first ever in centuries, only a few inches below her chin. How are you, Eyes? Issei furrowed his eyebrows at that. He wasn't too sure how to describe his weird sensation across his back. My back feels different. At that, she blinked in slight surprise. She forgot to force close his wings back into his back, somehow. As a result, the wings were awkwardly positioned during their sleep. She smiled towards him, somewhat awkwardly. Gabrielle lifted herself from the bed with one hand and the other kept the blanket held over her shoulders, or at least from dropping below her shoulders. She simply said, Issei, you're an angel. Then she released her own 6 pairs of wings and the ever-radiant halo atop her. Issei gaped in surprise. He stared as the white feathers soared and swayed before hitting the floor or the bed. Do I have those? After all, she did say he was an angel. Her smile grew, though she wasn't too sure why. Of course, come, sit up. She used the arm that held her up and made the motion of lifting something. She waited, ever patiently, ever forgiving, not that she minded in the first place. It was her fault in the first place after all. She smiled at the unbalancedness he had as he rose. It made her remember the old times. Those times was when angels were birthed or reincarnated left and right and struggled to even walk since they couldn't hide their wings within their back. With perfectly right curiosity, Issei felt slightly compelled to rise. He also felt warm in the face, slightly, as his chest hit the cooler air outside the perfectly warm blankets. He turned his neck, almost straining his neck, to look at his back. He had the same wings as Gabriel. However, he only had 2 pairs instead of 6 pairs of wings. "I have these," he said in disbelief. Gabriel nodded, feeling proud, or whatever the feeling, it made her smile wider. "You also have a halo above your head." She pointed above her head at her own halo. "Each has their own specialized radiance. I have to say, your radiance is quite beautiful," she said as she leaned forward to inspect the halo. It was similar her own. However, she has never felt such a connection to a halo like Issei's before. Maybe it was one of perks of being, to be able to tell who was hers, not that she would consider them, than being those who she would use the cards on, her own. Issei looked away from Gabriel after seeing something that made him blush heavily. His mother always said the chest area for a girl was special and sacred and shouldn't be seen unless they were willing to, and that he should look away if he did. However, if he found that other old person in the park, it would have changed him in ways one couldn't comprehend. He did exactly what his mother told him, yet he couldn't fight down the heat in his cheeks and almost couldn't fight the instinct to stare. "Gee, Gabriel, your sea chest." However, he felt as if cold water fell upon him, his thoughts were changed and warped. Yet, he felt natural, as if it always happened. Gabriel blinked as she saw Issei's wings flicker. She looked down towards her chest. Her blanket had fallen from her chest, she failed to realize. She giggled, softly. "Sorry," she said as she, with a wave of her hand, magically gained clothes on her body. "Come here, eyes, I'll put some clothes on you too." "All right." Issei turned back to Gabriel, taking in the simple strapless white gown. Gabriel put a hand to her chin as she thought of the perfect outfit for Issei. She blushed as she was just dressing a boy who was a meager fraction of her age. It didn't help that it was like she was a mother, an experience she has never felt. She frowned slightly at her last thought before giving Issei a simple white t-shirt and blue shorts. "No, this won't work," she muttered. Drake wouldn't like the colors. Yet, those were colors of heaven and life, as white was purity and righteousness, and blue was the color that signifies the vitality-giving liquid, water. Again she waved her hand over Issei. A red t-shirt and red sports shorts appeared instead. Red is the color of many things sinful. Hate, suffering, sin itself, worry, fear, vengeance. Yet, it also signifies, in the new world, love, compassion, passion, and by staying true to oneself. This should be good. She followed her statement with many nods. Green would look out of place, most defiantly. Issei looked at himself in disbelief. The clothes came out of nowhere, and yet they were, without a doubt, real. It was really magic. "See, can I do that?" She smiled at his enthusiasm. "If you wish to, I can teach you later." She paused as a small frown adored her face. "But, first, we need to." She took a breath in, unsure how she would deal with his parents. To lie is to sin, and would make her fall for sure. Yet, if it was in the name of her heavenly father, she wouldn't, yet didn't want to lie. "Go see your parents." Issei frowned as he realized his parents would be freaking out. "2 sen, ka-sen." He teared up but refused to let them fall. "How long?" Gabriel considered him, almost pityingly so. "Almost a week." Her throat felt dry. "They're really scared for you." She swallowed visibly. To be honest, Issei saw the many emotions in her eyes as her eyes glazed over with faint wetness. "I'm not sure what I'm supposed to do. Fear for him. But I'm sure it'll be fine." She smiled, gracefully, drawing herself off the bed onto the cloud ground. "Come, let us eat, ni." She struck out her hand like a parent to a child. "Why, yes." Issei took her left hand with his smaller right hand. They walked to the simple white door, hand in hand, side by side, towards a new life. Gabriel," she hummed happily as a response. "What time is it?" She shook her head, her blonde hair bobbing side to side, as she replied. "I'm not too sure myself, actually, because it's always bright here." Issei didn't respond, he simply walked along with his guardian. After moments of walking in an empty hallway made of clouds, Gabriel asked, curiously, "Is there anything specific you want to eat?" Issei was about to respond before another door, made from clouds, opened, revealing another angel, wings and all. The teen-looking angel had blonde hair and 2 hanging tails. Her attire consisted of a black and white maid dress, maid cap, thigh-high socks and blue slip-on shoes. His grasp on Gabriel's hand tightened unconsciously. "Gabriel-sama," the angel exclaimed, making her way towards them both. Issei let go over Gabriel's hand and moved behind her, hiding behind her legs. "Hello, are you well?" Gabriel followed her statement, looking back at child Issei. "Everything's fine, Issei. You don't need to hide." Slowly, he moved to take Gabriel's hand again as he realized he could understand the language he had not recalled ever knowing. Like he always knew it. The angel peered rather curiously at the child. "May I ask who this young child is?" The angel felt a holy aura akin her kind, but they were no pure angels at that age. Perhaps a miracle child. "He is mine own, Hayadu Issei." The angel blinked. It was her own. Who is the father?" With no hesitance she answered, "His father. Hayadu Masaru, a human in Japan." "Why, is something wrong, Midult?" The other female, Midult, a simple 2-winged angel, just gaped in utter shock. Gabriel had made utter love to a human without falling. "That means, how did you not fall?" She tilted her head, genuinely confused. "What do you mean? I thought we aren't allowed to have children." It took a few moments for Gabriel to realize what the angel meant. "Oh, his mother is not me, but another woman." That worked on him, however, don't try on anyone else yet. The angel eyes widened, however, she just turning and smiling brightly towards the oblivious child. Issei, was it? I'm Middlet, are you well? Issei nodded, feeling odd as he spoke. I'm just not used to having wings. Middlet nodded, taking note of everything about the boy. That's to be expected, she remembered when reading her more recent brethren were also having the same troubles. But'll get better, especially since you have me. The girl proudly pointed at herself with her thumb. In pure Japanese, she added, if you need anything, ask me, your one-chan, ni. Issei nodded, getting used to her presence. I will, oh one-chan. Issei then remembered a few things that Gabriel said. He timidly started to ask, actually, oh one-chan, can you? After Megumi was in the kitchen, her face adored a sad and pained look. The police said they vanished in thin air. No traces, no nothing anything. She was fixing dinner for Masaru before he got home, like a normal wife. He should be coming home any moment now. She didn't have anything else to do, either. The season was summer, and Issei was on summer break. So Issei would usually take all her energy and time, not that she minded. She stopped herself before she got to deepen her memories with a sigh. That was what she was doing if she wasn't cleaning, cooking, or shopping. Knock knock, Ka-san. Megumi jumped, almost dropping the entire spoon into the boiling pot, letting it sit on the edge. She knew that voice anywhere. Issei. She ran towards the door, her heart in her eyes and legs. Issei. She swung the door open, letting two figures into her vision. A blonde girl, but it wasn't Gabriel she faintly noted, and her ever-cheerful son. Ka-san. Issei jumped into her arms just as Megumi crouched down. Issei. Her vision blurred for the 100th time that week. Yet it was in pure joy and relief. Issei. Mel stood, her shoe twisting and digging into the pavement. She wasn't too used to type of things happening before her. She felt awkward and as if she was interfering. She was last angel as of before Issei, found in an abandoned crib of sorts a few years back. Whether or not it was in time stasis was unknown. After all, she was an angel, not fallen. She should have fell because her parents should have fell baby making ever since the Heavenly Father was deceased. A car engine veered behind her. Inside sat a bored-faced man, that was, until he laid eyes on his doorstep. Issei. He sped his way into his driveway. Megumi. Issei. Only Middle took notice of the man, moving out the way, gaining a thankful nod from him. Masaru knew it wasn't that his wife and child was trying to ignore him, but were too busy crying happy tears and crying out to each other. He gathered his family in his arms, tears letting themselves be known as they fell from his face. T2-san. Masaru. It's Issei. It's really him. In a great hug, a man and woman stood holding each other and their dear child. The houses Nibi had heard the shouts of names and looked from their windows at the commotion, only to smile among the finally united family. Ka-san, Tu-san. Megumi. From behind his modest nightgown-covered wife, Masaru embraced his beloved angel as he got into bed. Why does he feel different? Even the half-naked Masaru wasn't sure what exactly he was feeling around his son. It just felt strangely odd being near him, and he hadn't said a word since his return in fear of reminding his wife. Megumi, in turn, bit her lip, unsure what to say. I'm not too sure if I understand either, but his radiance, it's stronger. Masaru laid silently for a few moments before muttering, Gabriel. You may not realize, but Gabriel is a rather specific name, a name for the one of the greatest of my partial kin. Megumi blinked. Masaru Hayadu was mostly human, and only a half-angel, technically a miracle child. He was born in the dimensional gap, where his parents consumed their pure love, far from their original dimension. Even to that day, Masaru had no idea why everything was everything, but he grew up around his lone mother, a pure human, without questioning her judgment. She soon died since she succumbed to the strain of the dimensional gap, which Masaru had overcome by perfecting the spell for himself and his wife. Or, perhaps, it was his wife's power that prevented her from succumbing from the pain. He was only 17, barely out of school one day, going back to his sick mother. Masaru, why your father and I love you. She gave him permission to go to the room where she had all but banned him from entering. Masaru. Megumi knew all about his past. She was a shrine princess, not maiden or priestess. Perhaps she may only be a fourth godling, but she was much like a halfling. That also partially explained her miscarriages, she soon learned, which only to push her not only limit her power, but almost raise herself. Unconsciously, he grasped his wife tighter. He feels like her. I don't know how to describe it. That midlet girl too. He couldn't lose anything else. He could afford his wife to lose anything either. It went against his belief. What do we do? He couldn't let his family get dragged into the supernatural. All both of them wanted was a normal life. Masaru only knew who to use his power for a few things, two of which were a spell that hid his angelic aura and a transport spell to a certain space. Other than those and the others he learned, he didn't need his powers. He didn't find it a necessity to understand them, nor did he ever want to. Megumi feared her unique powers. She ran from home, ran from her title as a shrine princess, and ran into Masaru. Touching him had all but undid his seal, and started their eventful school year together. Neither of them were suited for the risk, and nor did they want to. Training for the risk would only cause problems. Their high school life only added to that fact. Megumi shook her head, leaning back against her lover. I want to ask Issei. I trust him, our beloved son. She smiled at her thoughts. Her mind drifted to her high school years. You're being too paranoid, Masa-chan. Why? He is our son. If anything, I should reprimand you. Turning in his arms, Megumi hugged her husband, tears streaming down her face. He's only been the same. If anything, the only thing I really notice is that he smiles more. Like I said before, we should thank Gabrielle-chan. She paused, allowing for a pained breath to slip from her lips. I felt a cut in our link. I didn't say anything when I felt it. But I should have. Creak. Ka-san, Tu-san. Turning back, Masaru saw his cherished child, rub his eyes as if he just woke up. Can I sleep with you? Glancing up and over to her son, Megumi rose from her spot, rubbing at her eyes much like Issei was. Why yes, we would like that. She smiled at her son. Issei was dragging his red blanket, cutely looking at them with half-closed eyes. See, can I get a pickup? He raised his arms at his question, as if he expected a yes. I got this. Wait here, May. She pouted at the name though she couldn't really say anything. After all, she did call him Masa-chan. Once he got his son in his arms, he aimed Issei to his wife. Look at Ka-san, isn't she pretty? Megumi with her white nightgown simply sat watching the two boys interact. Ka-san could be the most beautiful woman in the world. She didn't have a large chest, but her lightly tanned skin shined in the moonlight as her amber tresses laid over her left shoulder. It also framed her head perfectly. Ka-san is pretty, Issei said as his father placed him on the bed and soon was followed by his father. Megumi's blush darkened as she heard her son describe her. Come over here. With it she held her arms open. Ka-san. Masaru smiled down towards his wife and child, who both slept soundly wrapped in his arms. In between his own and his wife's arms, Issei slept peacefully, moving every once in a while. Masaru couldn't sleep. Why, was what he couldn't understand as he felt a strong urge to go outside. He ignored it at first, but he soon relented. Sitting at his doorstep was a blonde girl who looked faintly familiar. However, hearing the door click and open, the person turned. A sugary voice soon filled his ears. I apologize for waking you at this time, but I had to talk to you. I wish to start all over. I'm sorry, but I don't think I understand. Her presence wasn't hidden at the least, but he didn't feel threatened in any way. I'm your child's friend, Gabriel, Seraph out of 9. I wish to make amends. His eyes widened at her 10 wings. I wasn't wrong. Masaru collected his thoughts before speaking. Do you? Is there a barrier? The woman, Gabrielle, looked at him in surprise before she nodded slowly. Gabriel looked surprised as he freed his wings, his 4 wings. I am the child's father, Masaru, what's it called again? Ah, a miracle child, right. He made a gesture towards the ground next to Gabriel. May I take a seat? Blinking, Gabriel barely responded. This is your home. I take it that miracle children are rare. He watched her nod solemnly. Her thoughts were on her father. Your parents? Who? Dead. Masaru sighed. If it weren't for the fact that you saved my son, I'm not too sure what I would do. He stopped, and simply staring up at the sky. That made Gabrielle remember her original reason for going to the house. It's all my fault. I was being a little girl. He glanced at her. I don't think angels are good at acting, 'cause I, for one, can't act on my life. You really did look curious and all that childish stuff. He bowed. Gabrielle, thank you for saving my son. No, please raise your head. She looked at the sky in a similar manner as Masaru did. I took his freedom, and my presence caused him and his family unheeded and unnecessary pain. You protected my son in my place. I can't forgive myself. He stared towards the heavens again, clenching his hands into almost blood-drawing fist. I have a few questions, if I may ask. She shook her head in a dismissive manner. You don't need to be so formal with me, but ask away. How did you revive him? The question shocked the dubbed strongest woman in heaven, but she knew she should have saw it coming. She shook her head. I apologize. I don't think I'm allowed to answer that question. He nodded. I understand. Another girl came to his mind. Why did Mitla come in the place of you? Gabrielle tilted her head for a second. That was Issei's idea. However, I'm not sure if I understand too. She put a hand to her lip, but I think he was trying to protect you, somehow. Silence took over. Gabrielle, unused to speaking to people, only waited. Masaru mulled over his conversation with his wife. What do I do now? Gabrielle bit her lip, a sign of nervousness. I don't know if you'll permit it, but I promise that. I'll teach him. She stole a glance to the man. If he wasn't willing, Gabrielle wasn't sure what to do. She didn't want to break her promises. Is that so? Masaru found himself chuckling slightly. I'm a bit tempted to join, and I should have seen it coming. Will he change? Gabrielle smiled at that phrase. I don't think that child will ever change. He has an unbendable spirit. That's what kept him from changing. Is there anything I should know or should do? Gabrielle's smile softened. I don't believe there isn't anything else Issei wouldn't tell you. She looked at him. As for your second question, her wings left her back and her halo blinked as if were a dead light bulb before it faded away entirely. Just do what you think is right. After all, you haven't fell. Since Masaru was a half-angel, Gabrielle knew he had less restriction placed on him by God's system. However, ever since he had perished, the system wasn't as strong as it was before. Whether it placed more or less restrictions on him, Gabrielle didn't know. But she did know that he had yet to fall. Finally, she spoke with full conviction. All your decisions were pure, and I most certainly believe that. Plus, Sunday morning. Ka-san. And cold. The water. It's too cold. Issei shivered as he sat with his mother washing him. Megumi only smiled awkwardly. It's not even that cold. I don't get why you hate warm water. She shook her head. A great smile appeared on her face. We're almost done, eyes. Then, I'll make the ultimate meal for you. Oh, the ultimate. Walking with a piece of toast bread in his hand, he followed his mother who stood at their door. Ka-san, who's at the Issei stopped at the sight of a certain old female. With a smile, the not-so-stranger waved, gently, good morning, eyes, Megumi-san. Issei's mother blinked, that hair. It couldn't be. Gabriel, is that you? Ah, good morning, everyone, Gabriel. Megumi turned to see her husband make his way behind her. I spoke to her last night. But she didn't continue, only gaped in shock. Suddenly, the blonde woman interjected, Megumi, can I talk to you? Hey. Gabriel then shook her hands in front of her. I mean, it doesn't really matter if everyone's there, hi. Her expression went south, just wished to apologize. And no, everything's fine, just, please, come in, first. Megumi allowed herself to touch the beauty and tug her in, lightly. She stuck her head out the crack her door made, and allowed herself to look both ways, before shutting the front door. Ah, tea, thank you for the tea. Gabrielle felt herself shy from the family before her as she failingly hid behind her cup. Gabrielle was seated at the far end of the dinner table, having Issei, who was confused and quiet as if he noticed something, seated adjacent to her. Next to Issei was his mother and across Megumi was the father. So, Megumi started, unsure how to address the timid girl. Gee, Gabrielle-san, what's the matter? Gabrielle couldn't understand how they treated her so normally, or even forgave her so easily. She stole their son from them. Gabrielle bowed, a notion she learned from watching Issei. Before she spoke, she felt her throat dry. Her voice cracked as she spoke, I am sorry. I see couldn't protect Issei. Masaru opened his mouth but his wife cut him off, making him take a side glance towards her. Megumi was taken aback, but got to her senses first. Gee, Gabrielle, please raise your head. Megumi smiled at the girl once Gabrielle looked her way. As Megumi spoke, she felt her eyes water. If you haven't been there, I fear. No, I dread what I couldn't do. If anything, I wish to express my eternal gratitude. You saved my son in my place. She bowed in a similar manner to Gabrielle. Almost choking on her emotions, Megumi allowed herself to finish, thank you so much. But I didn't. This will just go in circles. Masaru sighed, this isn't healthy. It caused Megumi to smile and Gabrielle to become confused. Nini, Issei. Megumi stopped seeing her young child Ara, how cute. Her child slept with his head tilted, almost straining his neck. Let's let the child sleep. The other two nodded in agreement, as Megumi lifted Issei into her arms and walked to his room. After a moment of silence, Masaru left his seat. It was never you to blame. It wasn't your fault. As he passed the young woman, he grasped her shoulder, lightly. Feel free to visit whenever or stay until my child awakes. Gabrielle simply watched as he passed by her. I don't know what to do either. A pout overtook her for a few moments. She kinda missed her child. However, she decided to leave, feeling she would be intruding. Plus, 3 days later, late afternoon. Gabrielle, Ito. What do we do here? On a large rectangle plain of freshly cut grass, surrounded by various trees, Issei stood at the center, holding Gabrielle's left hand. I'm going to teach you superpowers. She smiled towards Issei. She waited for the excitement he was sure to give off. Looking at his guardian, Issei was jumping in childish anticipation. What? Really? Like shoot dragon balls? She felt herself grow excited too, as his excitement was pretty much contagious. She nodded. Okay, eyes, come stand before me and close your eyes. Issei obeyed and shut his eyes. I did it. She bent down to his height. Think of the strongest thing you ever seen and really picture it. Immediately, the effect was instant. She saw Issei's brow furrow and his face twitch. I wonder what he's thinking. Do you have it in your chhh honk? Without realizing it, Issei whispered to himself, that red dragon. His left hand cut into the sky, shining red all the while, almost scaring Gabrielle. A red gauntlet almost overtook his entire arm. The red draconian glove left his fingers exposed and it had 2 long yellow spikes coming out the side. A green gem glowed lightly on the backside of his hand. Suddenly, he felt like he could do anything. Whoa, he looked at the red glove thing. What is this? D-Drag. Gabrielle realized that D-Drag must have overexerted himself, helping her revive Issei. She smiled, gently, please rest if you need it. Gabrielle shook her head, clearing her thoughts. Issei, too busy ogling his arm, didn't notice the action. Hey. He looked out at her with a troubled face, a sack cred what? Hey, eyes. Before he could ask what it does, she spoke again, it doubles your power for a certain amount of time. So, I could be super strong. That's totally awesome. Issei started to run around and punching air like the hero. He saw that destroyed enemies with one punch. Awesome. But, if you become stronger, it becomes the Shiddo D-Drag after all. If training Issei and his sped up the awakening of the legend, so be it. It would still also help Issei growth and get him used to his powers, killing 3 stones with 1. It makes it so you will be able to double your power many times over. Really, he huffed as he stopped before Gabrielle. Okay, eyes. She crouched down next to him. Let's use your doubled powers and practice summoning your holy energies. Yada, let's. Okay, to start summoning you should focus in your palms. Putting her hands together, cupping them, she nudged towards them with her head. Like this. Okay, I got it. Issei followed quickly, staring down intensely at his hands. Pour you emotions, but they must be pure of intent like love, not lust, and, again, the troubled expression replaced his excited face. Ito, Gabrielle, what is lust? She didn't know why, but her cheeks went warm and she stopped moving for a moment. It's like loving someone, but it's because you only love that person for not who they are or what they have. That is lust, and just love. Does that mean I love Gabrielle? Issei blurted. I love everyone, therefore I must love eyes. She ruffled his hair, fighting her open expressions. So now that you understand, you mustn't taint your emotions, me. And I definitely won't. With a nod, Issei returned to his focusing, although he didn't really understand. Slowly, but surely, a ball of light slowly lit into life. In awe, Gabriel simply stared with Issei. Soon, it grew to the size of his head. I did it, Gabriel. Oh look. The child placed the ball of holy light in front of the crouched girl. That's really good, eyes. But if you don't, PSTPSSS. The ball lost its radiance and fade from the physical plane. If you don't focus, that'll happen, so you have to learn how to multitask. Okay, I will. Child Issei placed his hands together and focused with his utmost abilities. Let's do it again. I'll do it too. She summoned her own energies and made a ball. After summoning his ball of light multiple times, the one before a bit smaller than the next, Issei finally opened his eyes to see Gabriel's energies take shape. Gee Gabriel, that's so big, really big. The ball overshadowing the area, swallowing everything with its revitalizing radiance, yet it didn't do anything but speeding up the growth of flowers, along various other plants, and empower Issei. Whoa, reset, I'm tired already. Before he fell, Gabriel caught him. You aren't used to your gift from father. Lifting him into his arms, Gabriel blushed as she remembered her mother held him in the same manner. It's really good you could even use it for that long. Gabriel, can I sleep in that bed again? Before he knew it, his world went dark. Gabriel, would. She stopped, seeing his sleeping face. I guess it's time. She glanced past the 6-year-old Issei, over the trees and saw the sun setting, turning the sky various shades of red and yellow. Father, please watch over all your children. A 13-year-old Issei shot into the sky, bursting his 4 pairs of white wings from his back and a lustrous halo atop his head as his hair bled from brown to blonde. His eyes followed, bleeding from passionate brown to a shining emerald. It was a late morning that set, and the clouds were barely covering the sky. However, Issei didn't mind the sky, no, he was too focused on his plans. He was excited because for once, he had free time away from school and training. Yosh, Gabriel did promise he would be able to see her one day. And that day is today. He nodded confidently, he was going to make sure of it. I'm gonna visit Arena. He knew which direction was west, like a bird or a compass, and headed a bit north of west. England. Issei zoomed forward, focusing slightly on his arm, allowing for a familiar sensation to engulf his left hand up to his elbow. Boosted gear. Boost, boom, roar. With a sonic boom and a roar, Issei's vision blurred slightly as he only focused on going faster to get to England, where Arena said she would be living. The adrenaline started to pump through his body, making him unmindful of how much wasted energy he put in zooming through the sky in a holy white streak above the clouds. Not that it actually mattered. I can't wait to show Arena my wings. Issei grinned at the thought of Arena's surprised face. In that moment, he would pull her into a hug and hug her for all she was worth, and that was a lot for Issei. Arena was always on his mind for far too long that it would be an understatement to say that he simply missed her. Faster. Boom. Again. After a few minutes, he was almost past China. Faster. Boom. Issei laughed in pure joy. He could barely wait. I'm almost there. VR room FSSSSSSSH. A harsh wind blasted against Issei's wings and back as he suddenly stopped, high in the sky, at a point where people looked like dots. He pulled a picture from his pocket and unfolded it. On the picture, a lightly brown-haired girl, with an age much like his, in a plaid brown and green uniform. It was a small gift from Gabriel when he told her about his plan. So what are you going to do when I'm gone and without school? Gabriel asked, sitting crisscrossed in the warming sun. I think. Issei stopped to think of something. He jumped from his position and shot his left hand into the sky. I'm going to see Eri-chan. Gabriel smiled at his way as she reached into his pocket, also moving from her position. I knew you were going to pull something like this, so, here. From Issei's pocket was a folded picture of a girl. This is Eri-kun. Issei was flabbergasted. She looked so different, but it was still noticeable that it was still his best friend. Gabriel nodded as she reached into his pocket again to pull out a map. Yep, she should be at Canterbury, England, so make sure you know where it is, Kay. I'm really going to see Eri-kun. But you can only tell her of your secret. She ended her statement by tapped his nose with her right pointer finger. Okay. Yes, I will. Thank you, Gabriel. Issei almost jumped onto her as he moved to hug the woman. The woman giggled slightly at his enthusiasm and hugged back. You're welcome, eyes. She released some of her energy and let the sensation overtake them both. With that energy came a teleporting spell. Although Issei could do it himself, Gabriel often forgot as she liked to think of him as her son. Now, sleep Issei, I'll miss you, you know. Gabriel let a sad smile grace her face. She was rather dependent on the boy, not that he knew. I'll miss you too. He slipped into his bed, oddly wondering if his parents were sleeping too. Good night, Gabriel. Have a wonderful time, Ice. With a wave and another flash of her radiance, she was gone, leaving only fading specks of radiance. I wonder what Issei is doing. Issei plummeted down into a forest, but before he fell, he came to a stop with a strong beat of his wings. With it came a massive gale, shaking the whole surrounding area. FFSSSSSH. He was about to hide his wings and run through the city to find Irina, but he heard something. Ka. A high-pitched feminine voice cried out from somewhere around him. Huh. Issei followed the sound, wondering if someone had been caught up in his descent from the heavens. Jiaruiwa. It was a bellow of a beast. It caused Issei to speed his approach since the beast sounded angry. How Issei knew was lost on him. Once he made it to the beast, or chimera, he saw a girl around his age with long blue hair that barely went past her hip. In the girl's hand was a large golden and blue broadsword that gave off energy much like Issei's own angelic energies. What is she doing to a monster like that? The girl blocked another slash from the lizard-panther-rooster hybrid's claw. Then the blade started to shake violently in the girl's hands, though it seemed to make the monster back off a small distance, as the girl glared at the sword and frustrated. Come on. The girl stared down the sword as it was alive. She began swinging it around, but this time, her swings were a bit wavy and out of control. Issei was done watching and quietly made small ball born from his draconic energies. Dragon shot. The ball of red energy hit the beast as it was in mid-lunge. Boom! The blast obliterated the foul beast, making quick work of the monster. Issei wasn't going to allow the girl, who looked to be around his age, to get hurt on his watch. What? The girl deadpanned, seeing the beast she fought with all her energy being simply destroyed from an attack that came out of nowhere. Using the spell he learned from Gabriel, he translated her words and his next words into English after he debated whether he should approach the girl. In slow English, he said, Hey, are you okay? The blue-haired girl blinked repeatedly at the approaching angel. A heavy blade fell from her hands as her disbelief caught up to her. Issei, the oblivious boy, took it as a sign of weakness and tried to gather the girl in his arms, only for the girl to get to her knees with her hands together and her head down. Zenobia found herself blessed, confused, and amazed all at the same time. All she wanted to do was master the sword given to her. However, instead, she faced the pinnacle of purity, an angel with 4 pairs of wings, nonetheless, who also tried to hold her in an embrace. What do I do? Issei wasn't sure what exactly he was doing or should do. Are you okay? He repeated. Zenobia wasn't sure what to do in her predicament as she was never taught what to actually do in an angel's presence and racked her brain for answers. I'll just go. That statement was more of a question than a statement. Wait, Zenobia didn't realize what she said until it came out. Immediately, the girl clasped her hands against her mouth, horrified that she spoke after she chose to stay silent. Why yes. Issei was surprised but found himself returning to the girl. 10. She glanced towards Issei then averted her eyes, oddly embarrassed. Can you tell me how to become strong? Issei wasn't too sure how to answer the girl. He glanced to the abandoned broadsword. Durandal. Gabriel had told him about various holy artifacts, which included Durandal. Why are you in such a hurry? The sincere question made her pause. Why was she in such a hurry? Zenobia knew people hailed her as a warrior nun prodigy at a young age. Did that push her? No, it was to fill something within her. A hole of sorts. The last person who had sword, it took him many years to master the sword, you know. Issei stepped back from the girl. She already knew that. Yet, no matter how much pain and practice she went through, she couldn't effectively use the sword. It frustrated her to no end. She watched the angel pick up the sword with ease and swing it, lightly. Suddenly the green-eyed angel stabbed the sword into the ground, surprising her. Never forget, to wield any and everything, one must be of pure intention. A blinding light radiated from the sword. With the light fading, Issei was long gone. Issei sighed. He totally bullshitted his words and hoped he didn't mislead the girl. He wondered if Gabriel would get mad at him for revealing himself to a mortal that wasn't Irina. Nevertheless, he shoved it to the back of his mind when he spotted a lone girl skipping on the sidewalk. A smile overtook his face, voluntarily, as he began his approach. Issei stopped his approach and hid his presence when he noticed a person going up to her. It was Fat Man, who looked to be the priest over the nearby church, which he ushered Irina into. What's going on? Issei let himself move up towards the window. He spoke a small spell, allowing himself to phase through the window easily and without a trace. The church was a bit on the smaller side and empty of people besides Irina and the Fat Man. It was mainly golden brown with various columns and bench-like seats. Running down the middle was a regal blue carpet with a golden outline. With that, I bless the warrior nun, Irina Shidu. May God always be with you. A glowing blue gem fell from the man's hands and dropped into Irina's outstretched palms, only to fade away like diamond mist as it touched her hands. The man took a dagger and gave it to the girl, who gratefully took it. The dagger twisted and transformed into a ribbon, attaching itself to Irina's wrist. Warrior nun. I wonder what's Eyes doing nowadays. Behind Irina was an invisible Issei, smirking at the comment. Yeah, I wonder what I do nowadays too. He put a hand to his chin and nodded in agreement, waiting for her surprise. A knowing and happy smile split across his face. Quickly she turned, a soft voice reached her ears. The voice was familiar but so different at the same time. An angel. She blinked quickly in surprise before she got to her knees, shakily. Hi Issei-kun. His tone was happy and he even waved. My eyes. Irina lifted her head instantly at her childhood nickname because only one person called her Issei-kun. Yep, the one and only. His hair bled from blonde to its usual brown and his eyes followed in suit with a respective color, but he left his wings and halo out. Miss me, baby, but how? When? My best friend is an angel. Issei didn't answer her questions. Instead, he leaped at her with wide arms. He couldn't hold back the urge to hug her. It was the first time in ages that he's seen her. I missed you. Irina, still trying to get used to the fact that her childhood friend was an angel, barely hugged back and responded, yeah, I missed you too. Lightly, she patted at his back. The revaluation made her more than confused. I'm an angel, cool, right? Issei stated the obvious, oblivious to the fact as he pulled back from the embrace. A pout overtook her expression as she let her warrior facade drop. Moo, I want to be an angel too. She pulled at his back with childish vigor. Gimme your wings. She's still Issei-kun. No, wait. She stopped herself, realizing she was actually talking to an angel. She got to her knees, once again, leaving Issei confused. Hey? Issei was dumbfounded. Irina bit her lip, wondering if God would scorn her for acting in such a manner to one of his angels. She wanted to say something at the same time but didn't know how to address her friend. She decided she would only speak when asked. This. His tone was indifferent and slightly scared Irina as she wasn't used to that kind of tone from anyone, especially Issei. His expression changed. He wasn't happy. He didn't look mad either, which made Irina just a bit relieved. I didn't want it to come to this, but... His brown covered his eyes in an impenetrable shadow. His hands rose as if he was going to summon lightning. To pay for your sins, Irina, warrior nun, you shall perish. What? April Fools. Irina felt the wind get knocked out of her as menacing fingers reached her sides. He was tickling her. Oh hey eyes, yes stop. Perish with the power of the tickle angel. Issei found himself laughing with Irina. And no fair. Irina didn't realize he succeeded in making her drop her former expression and bowing stance. Issei-kun. No, Issei, that wasn't fair of you. In return, Issei scratched the back of head and laughed. I guess so. They sat in silence for a few moments, feeling the wind blow against them. Irina knew he definitely was Issei but him as an angel. She felt blessed now, even more blessed that she knew him before and at the fact that he was an angel, the peak of purity. Hey, Irina. Issei turned away from her with a sad smile on his face. Does me, being an angel, does it change anything? Irina's eyes widened at the question. Aye. Her studies wanted her to say yes. However, she knew the answer he wanted was no. I don't want to lose your friendship, Irina. At his heart, Issei was pure and only wanted to laugh and have fun every day with the people he favored, like a small child, which he wasn't anymore. I missed you a lot. I missed you a lot, too. Irina began remembering her vigorous training. Issei, does being an angel change our friendship? I don't want it to. Does that mean? But, Issei, I have my own responsibilities, so wait a bit longer. With a bright smile, Irina allowed herself to hug the angel. Irina. Issei hugged back, his thoughts and plans in disarray. However, he wasn't going to let that stop him. I have 3 days until I have to go back. So let's have the most fun. But eyes. I know. Issei felt a grin crept up his face. You want to know how it feels to fly? Issei didn't let her finish and picked her up bridal style. This way. He zoomed up into the sky, his 8 wings wrapped around them, making it seem like they were a white bullet. Issei, be careful. Irina wanted to squirm but she was afraid of falling. I'm not going to drop you, I promise. With his warm voice, Irina felt her heart go warm against her chest. However, Issei didn't notice her blushing and sudden timidness and continued, does the view look pretty? They weren't in England anymore, to say the least. The sky was yellow, purple and all the shades in between. The clouds were literally just above them. Irina swore she could just touch with a small jump if she wasn't in Issei's hold. Underneath them was a clearing in the forest. Everything around the clearing was green as far as the eye could see. But inside the clearing was a sight to behold. The clearing had her name in various flowers. She held a hand to her mouth. Issei, this is... Irina didn't finish her sentence for she was too immersed in the scenery around, above and below. It was simply breathtaking. I know, right? Issei silently casted a small spell, allowing for an invisible plane to appear. It took me forever to perfect the spell, I hope you like it. Issei let her down, and was careful so she wouldn't fall from his arms until she began squirming. Hey, what or why you? You're not going to fall, I promise, Issei said with his voice smooth and without fault. It made Irina feel a bit warm, especially when she looked up to his confident face. Oh okay. Hesitantly, she took a step, only to realize she was walking on nothing. She shot a look back to Issei to confirm that she was literally walking on nothing. He smiled gently with his playful look already long gone. Irina, don't be afraid, even if you somehow do fall, I'll catch you. She felt her ears go warm despite the chilling winds. Issei? Irina questioned as she took a small step forward. See, he confided his wings back into his back and Irina found herself staring. His graceful fall caused his hair to be lifted off his unblemished and faultless face. His maple eyes were the same eyes she grew up with, full of adventure and warmth. His red hooded jacket was much more like a cape as it swung back. His easygoing smile made her blush harshly. This isn't a dream. Hey, Irina. She didn't say anything. She was too embarrassed at her thoughts as steam lit her red ears. Why are you a warrior nun? Huh? She blinked at the unexpected and sudden question. Oh, you see, I'm one of the few candidates for a part of the Excalibur, 'cause my dad, you remember him. Issei nodded. Well, he's an exorcist, so, as his only child, he wanted me to follow his footsteps. And I wanted to become a hero, like we wanted. Oh, I want to know what you've learned so far. Issei jumped back and took a fighting stance. You want me to fight you? To fight an angel? I can't hurt an angel, moreover, Issei-kun. Issei faltered as he saw the conflict in Irina's eyes. No, we're not fighting. Issei thought of something and smirked, confidently. I bet you can't even touch me. Irina felt a smirk creeping up her own face as she saw Issei. He was going to play against her competitive side. I bet you I can. The ribbon around her wrist twisted and transformed into a katana. You're on. Chak. Issei dodged with a quick step to the side as Irina brought down her curved blade onto the nigh impenetrable plane. He smirked again and poked her in the forehead. In English, he said, tag you it. The way he said that, without proper grammar, with an annoyingly placed poke, and in such a teasingly tone, sparked a fire into her veins. You know I always win. Moo. Irina could barely pout as she huffed in exhaustion. You broke the game, Chua. Issei smirked in return. I can't let you beat for the 76th time. His smirk widened. Not that I'm counting or anything. I couldn't even get you once. You were close a few times, I'll give you that. He poked her by her waist as he crouched down beside her. You hungry? Actually, yeah, a little. Irina rolled onto the flat of her back when suddenly she was pulled from the plane and into something familiar. Hold up. It wasn't that she didn't like being held by Issei, surrounded by his pure white wings. Because being held by her childhood crush, Issei, was so blissfully secure and cordial. But she felt so embarrassed in his arms. She wanted to stay, hit him, and hug him all the same time. It was just the fact that he grabbed her so suddenly. She sighed, but Issei-kun wouldn't be Issei-kun if he wasn't forceful. She looked up to his face, only to avert her violet eyes as they caught Issei's concerned orbs. His concern caused her cheeks to dust pink, which only seemed to grow. Sorry, I'm just so excited. The nervous laugh that slipped through his lips caused her to smile gently. It's fine. With that, they slipped into calming silence. Issei-kun isn't Issei-kun if he didn't act so concerned either. The thought made her snuggle closer into Issei's hold and chest. Irina didn't realize it, but she soon fell asleep, forgetting about her slight hunger. Hey, Irina, wake up. There was something smacking against her right cheek. Come on, sleepyhead. Leave me alone, it's too cozy to move. She snuggled into the feather-soft whatever. But, Irina, Issei complained, though he didn't really mind. However, as Irina said before, she had her own responsibilities, like going home before dusk and feeding herself. Issei-kun, my guardian angel. He blushed at the comment. He's never heard such words from anyone. Irina looks so cute. It took forever, but he finally got Irina home. The problem was that he was forced into sleeping with her. Irina's parents were totally fine that he was visiting, especially when Irina blurted out that he was an angel, having old people bow down to him. He couldn't have that when it went against his morals. After a lot of convincing, he finally got them to act as if he was just a normal child. He sighed, turning back to Irina's sleeping face. I wonder what's going to happen tomorrow. What exactly were Irina's responsibilities? A simple room filled with just a bit more than the bare necessities and contained two 13-year-old preteens. On the white bed, the female had her arms in an embrace around the male. They were faced towards one another. The light spring blanket, which once covered them sometime during the night, fell down to both their legs in a tangled mess. While with a heavy, nonetheless, endearing yawn, Irina rubbed her eyelids before she actually took in her surroundings. When she did, her nitrous-colored eyes took in something that went beyond her wildest dreams. Eyes. The windows only let a small glance of morning's divine radiance peek into the room. It just so happened to fall upon Issei's figure. In front of her face, Irina blushed as saw morning first light spray itself against Issei's face. The light seemed so focused over his body that she truly believed that, if she hadn't yet, he was an angel among angels. Soon, Irina found it in herself to move. Hesitantly, she let her free left hand, which caused her to blush when she realized it was behind the sleeping boy in a mutual cuddle, come up to his face. Shakily, her hand brushed his silky yet messy chocolate hair from his unblemished and adorable resting face. She feared she would disturb the masterpiece that was her best friend. Chew. Before she knew it, her world turned dark as her eyes closed, and yet she felt somewhere on her body befall so whole, warm, so cherished, she couldn't help but have a small resistance against the sinful temptation to repeat her sinfully delightful action. Slowly, she pulled back. Her actions had yet to reach her. With her right pointer finger, she caressed her lips as her body touched a height of a warmth so high, she swore she could see the pearly gates of heaven. Finally, her thoughts began wandering as her ears released streams of steam. Fuyua. Madly, she shook her head. God, please forgive me for having such sinful thoughts. The noise Irina made finally caused Issei to wake. However, what he saw caused him to be utterly confused. Irina. Issei wasn't sure what exactly Irina was doing. She looked somewhere between having a seizure and an external exorcism. Terra. With a great deal of surprise, she tried to hit him with the ribbon-turned sword by an impulse. Hey. He grabbed the sword with a strong gust following. Irina, what were you doing this morning? Besides a blushing Irina, Issei asked with an innocent confusion. Just forget that, Irina said, as grabbing the sides of her face with pure embarrassment. Oh okay. Issei decided to drop the subject and watched as her twin tails shook with her every step. He sighed, pulled out a card from his pocket. What is this? Issei asked as the card was brought before him. Taoji put the card into his hands. Has Irina told you about who I am? Issei nodded, slowly, bringing the memory of yesterday to his mind. Today, Irina will start a different training. However, with you there, and no one but her knows you, I am allowed to pull some strings as a high-ranking exorcist, myself. Issei still wasn't sure what he was talking about, but read the card. You are going to be with Irina all day, right? At that, Issei stole a glance towards the eating Irina, who was a room away, oblivious to the very meeting I want to. Then you will get to because of that. He gestured toward the card once again. Watch her for me. With a smile, Taoji patted the growing boy by on his head. All right, I definitely will. Atop a small set of stairs that led to a large church, a sudden breeze blew through the area. Issei couldn't help but stare in awe as Irina's image filled his vision. The breeze tugged at her checkered green and brown skirt and at her amber twin tails. Thus, Irina grabbed at her hair and pushed down her skirt. Irina is pretty like Akasen. Moo, Issei, hurry already. With her cheeks cutely enlarged, she yelled towards Issei. Sorry. Irina by then had already turned and headed inside the church. The front of the grand church was 6 pure white pillars separated equally across the length of the building. Seating in between the middle two, the main entrance's gate-like doors were already opened. 2 men in pure silver armor guarded the entrance with a shield and spear by their sides. Card. Issei blinked as he saw the left guard stop Irina. So even she needs a card. From with her shoe, she pulled a small slip and passed it to the scarred guard. Irina's face was straight and almost bored-looking. Responsibilities. You may enter. Then the guard turned his way. He fumbled with the card, since he was unused to talking to people besides the ones he knew as he casted a spell to translate his words. Have it right. Here. With that, he passed it to the guard. Shidu. The guard didn't really seem to mind what was on the card or the lack of information. You may enter. Hi, I'm Irina Shidu. Cheerfully, Irina greeted the girl, which was awfully familiar to Issei. The girl was dressed in a battle get-up and was further covered by a white, hooded and full-body robe, lined with a green outline. On her back, beneath the robe, a large great sword stuck out the head opening and was covered with a sealing fabric, like a mummy. A small distance behind Irina, Issei was still catching up to Irina, taking in every detail of the church's walls. We're not here to make friends, was the blue-haired girl's blunt and cool response. Irina opened her mouth but didn't say anything. She realized she only acted in such a way because Issei and the excitement that came along with him was simply contagious. When she closed her mouth, she bit down on her lip and scolded herself. Then, she brought up her usual emotionless facade. When she was told she was going to work with the prodigy, Zenobia Quarta, Irina was excited for getting a partner, a strong and famous one at that. However, her personality was, perhaps, to be expected. She sadly noted. Issei's expression twisted with surprise when he saw the girl from yesterday. However, hearing her tone of speaking, and her words, he didn't stay surprised. He did doubt that his words would have an immediate effect on her. But, it's good to get along with your comrades. Issei injected, his surprise long gone from his expression. Zenobia shifted her line of sight from Irina to the brown-haired boy. One does not need friendship, she repeated, observing the boy. He looked awfully familiar, but there was no way that he was an angel. While the angel did have a similar hairstyle, his hair was blonde and he had emerald green eyes, not maple brown hair and eyes. Besides, the angels haven't been seen or heard from for years, or at least, that's what she has been told. Whatever happened yesterday, she disregarded. You are, she spat back. Issei Hayadu, wielder of a holy sword, created and blessed by God. In other words, he carried a true holy weapon. Irina suddenly turned his way when she heard his response in surprise. Invertly, it meant the Heavenly Father blessed him. Never heard of you. Zenobia removed herself from the leaning position against the wall and began walking towards yet another hallway. I'm Zenobia Quarta, but let's move. All right. Both Issei and Irina wasn't sure what to think of the girl. And so, the journey to the training area began and remained in silence. SHHK. With a powerful swing, the sealing fabric flew right off and into the Zenovia's hand, wrapping itself, masterfully, around her wrist. Excalibur, destruction, Issei heard Irina mumbled. What about Durandal? As Zenobia took her robe off, she said, I heard you also have an Excalibur. Mimic, I believe. Why yeah, I have Excalibur, Mimic. The ribbon on her wrist shifted and twirled, turning itself into a golden katana with an intricate azure design. I want to test your strength, your faith. Again, her blunt words put up a silence. Issei moved to say something, but was stopped from Irina's hand. Once she turned his way, she smiled. I got it, Issei-kun. However, her smile seemed a bit sad. She knew she was going to lose, but wasn't going to back down. Just watch for now, Ni. Leaning on a bluish-gray wall behind Irina, Issei watched the two exorcists face off in the large dirt training grounds. I shall take first move, Zenobia said at the same moment her legs kicked off the ground. It was barely meager 2 seconds when Zenobia reached a similar dressed Irina. In pure strength, destruction outmatched Mimic in every way. However, with Mimic having the ability to transform, Irina had technique on her side. And most importantly, she had Issei behind her. She couldn't hit him, yes, but she could still show him the fruits of her training with better vigor. Yesterday was a fluke. Why yes, a fluke. Issei-kun, watch me. Her sharp blade morphed into a 10-tailed whip, and with a flick of her wrist, the whip slapped and wrapped around Zenovia's wrist. With her simple counter, she pulled her odd weapon so that Zenobia would either miss or release her grip on her weapon. Zenobia smirked when the sword drew closer towards the ground, near her opponent, and continued pushing the swing, not care if the swing didn't hit Irina. In fact, she looked to push the sword with even more strength. It seemed that Irina didn't know the full extent of Zenovia's weapon, Zenobia noted. Once the great blue blade touched the ground, an explosion occurred and blew them both away. However, unprepared, Irina took the attack almost head first without properly adjusting herself. Zenobia smirked to herself, using the friction between her feet and the rough terrain to slow her to a stop only a small distance away. Kala. Irina was sent tumbling against the harsh dirt ground. Small clouds of dust and dirt followed each bounce. Irina. Issei bit his lip. He wanted to stop it, but he knew Irina wouldn't want that. He immediately searched her for wounds as she stood up. She only had minor bruises, causing him to sigh in relief. The multi-tailed whip morphed back into a katana. However, instead of her usual open stance, she took up a Japanese stance, spreading her legs apart and her blade up to her eyes. The blade's flat edge aimed down as she prepared for her next strike. Here I go. With that, she kicked off, lunging forward at an incredible speed for a human. Clang. Oh, Zenobia gained an amused expression as she barely blocked the strike. That was a good strike. Irina knew that given time, Zenobia could turn her block into an attack simply with the amount brute force Zenobia had, from observing Zenovia's first swing. With that in mind, she paid close attention to Zenobia as she morphed her sword once more. It was like a joust lance. However, it was as if it curved around a lance to make a hollow drill, spiral shape. Tiyach. Irina pulled back from the sword lock and watched in horror as Zenovia's blade came in contact with the ground once more. As fast as she could, she forced the sword to change into a circular shield. However, she was not aware of her hands glowing a heavenly yellow as she did so. The attack, while harsh, barely grazed, thanks to her transforming shield. It morphed back its former drill shape. If she was in the crater and hadn't moved back, she doubted she would have survived to continue the fight. Never seen a weapon like yours, Zenobia noted, a bit weary. Irina didn't say again. But, instead, Irina eyed Zenovia's low stance that had Zenobia place her sword on her right shoulder and other hand on her hip. Have you used the element? The what? I take it as a no then. With a yellowish-white glow, her sword gained a massive and overwhelming aura, which forced a sense of dread over her. What is this? Nervously, she eyed the sword. It was like the normal exorcist lightsabers, but the sword was not a work of the church's light-catching but of Zenovia's own person, as she could see the latter's body also gaining the glow. Just how did she gather that element? Wholly infusing or using the holy element was all she simply said as she gathered her powerful sword for an overhead swing. It doesn't matter how great a distance. I will win. With pure determination in her words, she swung down with yellow metaphysical slash tearing through its path at a ferocious pace. Checkmate. A scowling appeared out of nowhere at D. Dryig's voice. Seeing his weapon emerge, Issei gripped his sword with a tight hold. That's enough. Issei's voice was thick with disapproval. He didn't approve the fact Zenobia attacked Irina with something of such a high-level attack to someone who quite literally just learned of the holy element. FSSSSH. The holy attack dissipated with one swing of Issei's sword. Oh, Zenovia's brow rose as noticed Issei's strength to put out her attack with a simple swing. She observed his so-called God-blessed blade. It was a long sword based on its length and its grip. It was mostly a pleasant gold with a white fuller. The grip was covered in a red strap that contrasted with most of the sword. However, the guard that was just above the grip it was odd. It was curved, not vertical down or simply straight but vertical upwards like golden scaled claws. When it shined by the lighting, it wasn't just with the blinding glare, but it radiated an elliptical rainbow. That's St. George's sword. St. George was one of the most venerated saints and used as a symbol of protection and strength in the Christianity faith. He was also one of few that have killed a dragon. While it was a young dragon the size of a large horse, it was a dragon nonetheless. After all, he was simply human. However, to be allowed to brandish the sword, she couldn't imagine what hardships he had to do in order to even be allowed to touch one of the most protected swords of the church. The only reason she was allowed to use Carrie Durandal was that she, unlike most people, was simply one of the chosen few. Besides, there was literally no one else but one aging, nonetheless, headstrong human person that could touch the sword without so much as feeling harsh repercussions. She was simply chosen for a fate she never chose. So, in the end, she just went with the flow of her life, a puppet to its strings. If only she knew the truth. Issei snapped his finger, watching as his sword disappear in mystical white mist to its confinements within the He then glanced towards the weak-willed Irina, who sat on the ground on her thighs and legs. "Are you okay, Irina?" Issei crouched down and examined Irina once more. Irina didn't say anything. The two great people before her were way out of her league. The strength, faith, they wielded was far more than she had. Irina was conflicted. She didn't find it right that she was someone to hold a sword that was supposed to be among the same strength of her new comrade and Issei. She felt like she didn't deserve to wield such a great sword when the gap of strength, talent, faith was far too great. But she didn't want to give up on her dream, especially when Issei became an angel. It just made her dream all the more real. "Thank you, eyes," she almost whispered. However, she hoped she didn't have to say it so early. She wanted to put up a better fight. But perhaps it was just because she was up against the prodigy among 3 others. She wished that Issei wouldn't leave her for being so weak. She didn't have a right to stand by them. Irina. He couldn't understand why Irina was so deflated. She had an incredible amount of energy just before, but where did it all go? "I'm fine," but her tone was blank, like the facade that recaptured her face. "I don't know what to do." "Fight me," interjected Zenobia with resolve to defeat someone looked to be on par with her. Zenobia was going to have her fight one way or another. Was Issei's smart answer before Zenobia kicked off the ground. Was Issei's smart answer before Zenobia kicked off the ground. Issei quickly forced a scallon out of his domain, as if it were by the flick of his wrist. The blade was upside down as it materialized out of the glowing emerald gem that disappeared into the back of his hand. Swiftly, Issei turned to grab his trusted sword in the reverse position. Using the flat side of the famous sword, Issei parried the offensive push. H. Zenobia drove the sword down, as if to break it. Catch. It was weaker than Issei originally expected it was. He wasn't sure if she was holding back or. His eyes narrowed as she went towards him with a roundhouse kick. Perhaps she wasn't only good at wielding swords, but also brawling. Quickly, yet hesitantly, Issei chose whether or not he should use the. He glanced back to Irina, who wasn't paying attention, to finalize his answer. It wasn't worth it, he decided. Not even Irina knew of it yet. Zenobia came to attack him again, jumping into the air to gain more power into her long slash. "I'm not going to hold back anymore." Her sword matched her fury, sporting a new harsher glow. Issei parried the blow with a slight tap, trying not to hurt her as he felt disturbed by her slowness and her rather weak blows. This is too easy. Even without the or his angelic powers to empower him, Zenobia was simply much too easy to read, block, attack, and simply to defeat. If he were honest, he was sure that Irina was faster than she was. It almost made him scared of how much stronger he was than the purely human prodigy before him. He didn't want to hurt her, he fought only to fight the baddies because he was a hero. But it never occurred to him that he fought Irina until now. He glanced to her again. Did he hurt her? No. Fiercely, he shook his head. He did not, would not, could not, ever. Moreover, he made sure to scan her. She was fine, exempting the minor bruises from accepting Zenovia's spar. However, why was Irina, perhaps, angry with him? Also, after watching Zenobia, he couldn't help but wonder why did Zenobia also look so mad. Zenobia was confused, much more so than usual. She, a blade prodigy, was losing. Not that it wasn't a normal occurrence due to her adopted guardian's usual spars, but her opponent was one she has never heard of. One who was much more skilled than she was, and yet she has never heard of him. No word of such a person, prodigy. Well, of course it should have been expected as he did wield that sword. However, she was the blade prodigy, a swift natural. It frustrated her to no end. She has never lost, only in face of the greatest exorcist of all exorcists. When it came to swords, she was one of the top. She trained for her whole life. Pain, sweat, tears, everything. Up until recently, her growth had came to a massive halt. Durandal wasn't bending to her will. She was so frustrated. She couldn't drive through as she always did. She had shot through the ranks of her sword school, the ranks of Vatican, and her life, without stop. She wasn't used to making decisions, she was fine with that. She wasn't used to teaming up, but she would drive through and deal with it as she has done for everything else. There was no need for technical, unnecessary things if she had absolute power and some time to focus that power. But why couldn't she do that anymore? She felt as if she couldn't become better anymore, an unmovable wall without cracks or faults stopping her, too tall to even think about jumping over. Hua, she roared as she pushed her body to limit, trying to at least to cause the boy to flinch. But, nonetheless, he would dodge and draw back, every time, almost as if he was afraid to block her attacks. However, upon seeing that he blocked her initiation attacks, she thought otherwise. Again, he dodged. It was so annoying. She charged her swing again, launching herself. As she moved her muscles to swing, her holy blade sliced through the air with a holy aura. Take this. Like a crescent, the aura shot from the blade edge and towards Issei, who had yet again jumped back to dodge. It didn't even faze him. She simply watched as he used his sword to disperse the attack into the air, where the energy shimmered until it ultimately disappeared. He looked at her, with those eyes again. He wasn't taking the fight serious at all. She glared, charging for an ultimate technique. I am not done yet. Summoning the most energy she could, she was going to force it from her sword. Your attacks. Zenobia paused, mid-swing, blinking at his sudden words. They are not. He paused, hesitantly. Pure. That's. Zenobia seemingly stopped and dropped her blade, letting it sink into the dirt. Those words, while not the same as the 8-winged angels, it was pointing out what the angel had also said. Seeing that, Issei dropped his blade and sealed it back into in its place, there was dispersing mist. I know that. Her voice held a hidden fury. She couldn't hold it back as she had finally snapped. Tears left her eyes as she shook her head in some foreign emotion, her short blue hair spilling everywhere. I know that. I know. But, what did he know? He didn't know she was afraid of becoming useless. If she wasn't good at being an exorcist, what was she good at? She knew she was only good at that. She knew so bluntly. But did he know? Of course not. So what if she was a prodigy? And she wasn't getting any better anymore. Why, people were going to catch up to her sooner or later and leave her in the dust. She couldn't have that. She was far too invested into becoming the best to do so. She couldn't afford for pure attacks when she couldn't afford to even slow down her pace. However, her world was falling apart. She wasn't the same person as she used to be. She didn't know how to drive forward anymore without these impossible emotions bothering her. She couldn't understand, and that frustrated her no matter how much she hid it. She fell to her knees, her palms to her eyes. I know. She knew she didn't want to cry, especially in front of people she quite literally just met. However, she also knew she didn't want to lose her relevance. She only knew how to fight, not how to deal with thoughts and emotions she wasn't supposed to have. I know. Issei bit lip, wondering if he was the cause to Zenovia's sadness. He glanced back to Irina, who had turned away, feeling guilty at watching the spectacle, though she was also having similar thoughts. What exactly had he done? Steeling himself, he slowly approached the sobbing girl on her knees. But, I don't know, she repeated, finish each within her mind. I don't know. She didn't know how to deal with emotions, being useless, slow down, unable to change, overcome anymore. He stopped before her and dropped to his knees. Zenobia didn't notice him. Quickly, he racked his brain for something Gabriel would do. What would she do if he were sad, crying? She would, most definitely. He took his arms to surround the girl. She stiffened at his touch, but did nothing about it. He pulled her close, pulling them both onto their knees. Zenovia's arms were together and between them, shaking as her hands moved to somehow stop her tears. I won't. He started to whisper into her ear, act like I know. He noticed she began quieting. But, no, it's okay to cry. It shows you're human. That's what Gabriel taught him after all. You may not understand everything, all the time, but that's what the people around you are for, whether they be family, friends, or comrades. Michio thankfully taught him that. You're not alone. There's no hurry, maybe a change of pacing, but there's no need to rush. His mother had told him that when he wanted to make friends. He felt a bit surprised that he remembered it. A sudden throat-clearing surprised the three of them. A sister, who looked to be in her late 20s, stood at the room's entrance. Her hair was hidden by her black dressing, but her figure was rather pronounced and akin to a Northern European actress. However, what stood out was her piercing, almost demonic, blue eyes that shined even in the shade of her hood and her small smile. She nodded, in acknowledgement, to the brown-haired boy who she has never seen, and Irina, whose eyes widened with respect and a small sense of fear. However, Zenobia stiffened, rigid as a rock, and refused to look towards the person. Zenobia, the woman said as she began making her way toward the three. At the sound of her name, Zenobia reluctantly turned to speak. Why yes, what are you doing? The woman asked simply, not one sign of her inner thoughts. Quickly, faster than her own strikes, she jumped from Issei and fiddled with her blue sword. And nothing. Just nothing? Even Issei and Irina was surprised at her quick change in demeanor. The woman crossed her arms, one of her brows twitching, but other than that, she was perfectly still and flat. Do you remember what I asked of you? Zenobia blinked at the question, but after a moment, her eyes and expression gained a sense of pride as if she remembered. Yes, ma'am. However, just after answering, she knew she had just dug her own grave. She wasn't sure if shattering pride had a tangible noise, but she heard something crack within her. The unnamed woman narrowed her eyes. Then tell me, what was it? Her hand twitched, letting the blade's handle slip from her grasp. It was not T2, Pleading for mercy with her eyes, she looked towards the suddenly menacing woman, who responded with her eyes, which, in short, said get on with it or something will happen. T to not start any fights. That's right. She huffed, in annoyance, then sternly continued, I'll let you off for this one time. She calmly and gracefully turned to the two other persons of the room. I still haven't introduced myself. She did a soft bow. My name is Grisela Corda. I will be supervising this group. I hope to get along with you, Irina, and she stopped at the boy, and, may I ask who you are? Issei was pretty sure she was powerful to even instill fear into the reckless girl, Zenobia, along with all those rumors in heaven, as a simple human. Knowing that, he had to draw in his confidence before speaking, still unused to new people. Hayatu Issei, wielder of a true holy weapon. Nice to meet you, Sister Grisela. I'll only be here for a few days, but I got permission from Tauji Shidu to attend with Irina. Oh, she racked her mind for the numerous active true holy swords of the church. Actually, after she thought about it, there wasn't that many. 4 pieces of Excalibur, Durandal by Zenobia, Hudekler within a certain Shidu hands, a Scallon which was said to be in action, and Joyous. Recently, Caliburn went missing. It was probably in the also missing Pendragon's hands. 8 swords in total. Still pondering on which sword he retained, she greeted him in Arena. May I ask which sword? Issei stopped, unsure if he could answer. However, he already has revealed a Scallon to Zenobia in Arena already. So, he internally sighed, hoping if Gabriel would forgive his mistake before he said, I hold a Scallon, the Dragon Slayer. He would have summoned the sword, but he saw the woman's eyes narrow slightly. She probably had knowledge on it. She was one of the highest-ranking exorcists. Whether she knew in depth about his, he didn't actually know, but he could bet that she did know its appearance and mundane abilities. As such with the other 12 game-changing, Longinus class. Couldn't he reveal it? Not even to Arena. Whenever he summons upon the sword, the gem or the entire gauntlet of the would appear for the briefest of moments. He couldn't doubt the piercing eyes of the highly spoken exorcist. Even among angels, even Mitchell, and that said a lot, wouldn't be able to see it. She thought to herself, turning towards Zenobia again. So, what do you think about your new partner, Irina Shidu? Her pacing began slowing. However, Issei's eyes narrowed, seeing a familiar handle-like figure outline in her robe as she moved. Flustered at the woman's presence, the girl fearfully answered. Yes, she is. Adequate and faster than I am. She, lacks power. Issei snapped. His arm flexed and his legs moved. What are you doing? Issei repeated Greiselda's words right back at her. It almost came off as an angry growl. Issei's eyes narrowed as he glared at the woman. She dared to hurt Arena. In his outstretched hand, which he could barely control in his almost blinding fury, the hidden blade from underneath the older sister's robe was pointed towards Arena. Just who is this person? Greiselda never intended to harm the girl, perhaps frighten the girl, but she had no thoughts at all to even touch the girl. She was moving at speeds far more superior than Zenovia's or Arena's. However, to intercept her high-speed, light-empowered sword, stopping it completely in its path, simply with his palm. Just what madness is this sea child? There was none she knew of that was of this kind of strength. While it wasn't at her full speed, she could tell Issei could move faster than he showed just then, as his breathing was perfectly normal. She tugged at her blade. It didn't budge. She pulled harder. Issei refused to let go of the sword. And gripping as he was, he didn't show any signs of bleeding, pain, or discomfort, besides his anger. She sighed, trying to gather what respect she had left. I wasn't going to hurt her, only test her, I promise. She let the blade go and let her rod fall. She wore the standard female exorcist clothing with standard equipment. However, her person also carried 2 pair of quivers at both sides of her waist, and mounted atop her wrists were mini crossbows. She shrugged, shooting a glance to Zenobia, admitting something. I was going to train her the same way I do to Zenobia. I'm often described as a scary and merciless monster because the way I teach. Issei, Arena's left hand hesitatingly reached out to Issei. I'm fine, really. I should have been expecting it. Arena reprimanded herself. She brushed herself off, and took the sword from Issei's hand, then deactivated it. But, Issei looked kinda, cool there. It's true what she said. I mean, it's not that you're scary, Sister Greiselda. Her eyes met those eyes everyone feared. Arena looked down, deciding that it was better to leave it at that. Greiselda raised a brow when she saw how controlled Issei acted with Arena. This really something else. She pushed her thoughts away and clapped her hands. It's all fine, I don't mind, really. Zenobia moved closer to the group and addressed her guardian. Sister Greiselda, you said something about AM mission this morning. Her words grabbed Issei's and Arena's attention instantly. Already, Arena, still pondering over her worth, wasn't sure if she was ready. She looked to Issei. He was born ready. He looked so cool, holding his own against Zenobia and stopping her new mentor's feint attack. She caught his face and his concerned orbs met hers. She looked away, reluctantly. Her sight landed on Zenobia, the prodigy, and, despite her being the same age, already had much experience under Greiselda. Who was she, to try to fit in the group? Was she only allowed to wield a fragment of Excalibur because of her father's ranking? Because Arena had to be blessed a few years ago in order to even touch a true holy sword, unlike a certain brunette, epitome of sword compatibility. She shook her head, pushing her thoughts away. She wasn't supposed to think that way. She was supposed to be cheerful, and a hero, who always saves the day and selfless, like an angel. Well, Sister Greiselda, do why you think we're ready. Am I ready? Arena, is something the matter? Issei-kun. The said girl glanced away, unable to find it within herself to look at Issei. Her unnecessary emotions were worrying Issei. She knew that. But, seeing her childhood friend, she couldn't help but feel whatever emotions. She didn't blame him, and it wasn't solely because he was an angel. If anything, it made Issei all the more pure. Issei-kun, she started softly, am I weak? The question caused Issei to frown slightly, before he raked his mind for an answer. Honestly, Arena, everyone starts out weak. Compared to me, you're weak. Compared to Zenobia, you're weak. Arena felt her eyes water at his words. Then I. But, Arena, compared to other humans, from what I've seen, at least, especially at our age, you're pretty strong. Issei smiled brightly. Surely, if you always look at what's important, you'll get strong. I know it's not Zenovia's strength you need, it's not my powers either. Irina just needs to be Iri-chan in order to become strong. Those words to Issei felt right and came directly from his heart. He just hoped it reached Irina's conflicted heart. I certainly believe that with faith. Yes, she nodded to herself, reaching some sort of conclusion. Yes, thank you, Issei. Her troubled tears fell, however, they didn't fall because of conflicting thoughts but rather because of her joy. Then, her smile positively provoked Issei's radiance. As she wiped at her tears from her beautiful face, Issei-kun, will you always be eyes? Issei's smile grew. Yep, always. Pinky swear, for old time's sake. Und, Irina nodded, encouragingly, for old time's sake. With that, their pinkies interlocked, inadvertently bringing the two of them closer in order to show their determination. And thus, divine amethyst orbs met its brilliant maple brown counterpart. Issei, Irina. See, Zenovia, this is the type of bond one must have with close comrades. Grysla's voice pierced through the lovey-dovey atmosphere between Issei and Irina, like an epic holy sword to a sinister devil. Then, one can grow stronger. Zenovia, her expression completely serious, nodded, studying the two of them with a hand upon her chin. This more difficult than I thought, she exclaimed in a deadpan tone. It went without saying that Issei and Irina had separated with blushing faces, although closer than ever before. The four exorcists stood around a map, their focus on an area encircled in red. Grysla pointed to one section of the enclosed area, the darker section. Young Irina will come with me, and the older sister shifted her slender finger to a lighter area, young Zenovia with go with. Young Issei over by the recent fire and the other ruins nearby. Does it sound fine? The three of them nodded, but Issei's was slower than the others. Hearing the pair up, Issei felt something within himself wanting to be paired up with Irina. It was a selfish wish he knew. Yet, it didn't help the fact, especially more so that he felt his left arm tingling, causing him to grab it, tensing a little. However, Irina had felt his gaze. I'll be fine, she mouthed, a bright and adorable smile etched across her expression, one that didn't match a normal exorcist. Nonetheless, she had gotten back her drive. Issei simply nodded, gripping his arm a bit looser. For now, he would trust Grysla. Besides, if he worried too much, Irina would probably get mad with a cute pouty face. For sure. But he didn't want Irina to be mad at him, because she couldn't and wouldn't get stronger like she wanted to if he doted on her too much. Why? He realized he couldn't be her shining knight in armor, or her guardian angel. His face twisted in despair as he slumped forward. Strong-willed women are hard. Unnoticing to Issei's dejected atmosphere, the four of them parted in pairs. Hayadu, is something the matter? She was unfamiliar to his way of walking, slumping forward, arms hung listlessly, and dragging one's feet. Was it perhaps a secret technique to be unnoticed by evil? Or was it a technique to sense evil? Or, no, nothing at all. Here in their mission, investigate the supernatural's unnaturally high activity in the area, the mysterious disappearance, deaths of various exorcists, holy men, and protect the people in the area. Spiriting at high speeds, Zenovia trailed behind Issei. She wasn't sure of his motive of diverging from the path, but he had muttered something about what with his senses. I don't smell anything. Suddenly he came to a stop. Are you okay? Issei called out, seeing a white exorcist, a tree branch through the side of his chest, struggling to live. Behind him, Zenovia's eyes narrowed, paying close attention to the shadows around, slumping forward in the same position as Issei had once taken. She wasn't sure what the stance was for, but it seemed that it was rather good for analyzing. The positioning was simply amazing. The exorcist's eyes glittered with hope as he tried to communicate. Gira. Issei's eyes narrowed, a shadow shifting in the shade of the trees. Watch over there by the trees, he whispered to warn his blue-haired companion. The blue-haired girl nodded. However, instead of simply watching, she strolled up the spot, readying her unrevealed sword by holding it as laid against her back. Zenovia, what are you doing? We should be helping this injured man. But why? I'm only good at fighting, and with a fatal wound like his. She didn't voice her thoughts, but her face steeled with fierce determination. She would take revenge. Come out, devil. A young blonde girl rolled out the brushes, surprising Zenovia into instantly drawing her sword. Whoa, hold up. Issei jumped in front of the blade, stopping it with his left hand, and protecting the young girl who looked to be around their age. Ooh, I heard noises and oh no. Look at that man. Without hesitation, the blonde girl quickly but clumsily ran to the pierced man. With the help of Issei, the girl got the man down and placed her hands together in a prayer, a position a devil can't take without getting hurt. However, what mostly persuaded Zenovia that the girl before wasn't one of evil was the fact that there was a healing green light released from her hands and prayers. Even Issei was shocked at the rate the man was healing. The Holy Maiden. Zenovia kneeled behind the girl, her hands in the same stance, in order to strengthen the Holy Maiden's prayer. I should have helped the man first. She was beginning to acknowledge her head-headedness and her narrow mind. Did Issei, perhaps, have some way to help him? After long moments, the blonde girl fell back into Issei's quick arms, exhausted but satisfied as the man was healed enough that he wasn't in mortal danger. Thank you, Mr. Exorcist. She blushed inwardly, unused to being so close to the opposite sex around her age. And no, it's really all fine. Issei felt his heart thump and his left arm throb once more. He didn't realize it, but the girl had a great affinity with the draconic. Instead, I should be thanking you for healing a fellow exorcist. He bowed impulsively. Thank you for your kindness. For all his knowledge he had gathered over time, Issei doubted he would be able to heal the person even if he used his powers. He frankly wasn't a person for anything other than overwhelming offensive abilities, but he still could try to latent the death. Simply, it was amazing that that nun could do it, almost just like that. Zenovia blinked as the revered holy maiden fainted. Her surprise only lasted just short of Asia almost dropping to the floor. However, she stopped herself from advancing forward to catch. Issei was already gathering her into his arms with a frown. She started to draw from her own life force unnecessarily. Her mind racked for reasons. She opened her mouth, only to shut it a moment later. Zenovia knew not the inner workings to God's gifts. Ultimately, she decided it wasn't important if she couldn't figure it out or if no one could tell her. Such was the life of hers. It was better to forget than to question. She had no qualms about it, unlike most her age. Her curiosity lied in a different place, when the church was all too happy to oblige. She wasn't blind to it, although she knew that was starting to change. For better or for worse, she did not know. It was something to ask her sister about, maybe. Could you carry her? While it was stated as a question, he already outstretched his arms towards her as if her answer was obvious. His gaze was towards the stabilized exorcist. I'll carry him and we can move back towards the rendezvous point early. She didn't have her usual rigid confidence with the idea of carrying the injured safely, so she accommodated his request with a nod. When the weight of the girl settled onto her, there was a moment of silent surprise. The holy maiden was scarily light. From her peripheral vision, Issei noticed it. Oh, I enacted a weightless miracle. She made herself not react. She neither felt or saw any usage of holy energy. That caused her cold sweat, which she hoped he didn't notice. A feat such as that only belonged to the best of exorcists after decades of training, where calling upon miracles of God was a trained muscle. Unless he held an artifact for something like this. It was rather unlikely though, since he was given a sword. The church didn't like having so much power in one place or one person. Herself being one of the few exceptions, with her all-natural affinity combined with her connections and orphan past. Nonetheless, she knew nothing about him and indulged a mindless thought as she ran after him. It would be another 30 minutes before Zenovia would say anything. Hayadu. The boy blinked, stopping before her. Yeah. Who are you? At that, the brunet could only tilt his head in visible confusion. Issei Hayadu. Furrowing his brows, he set the man down on an especially green patch of grass. There was a glow emitting from the man. The aura felt comforting. Should keep him stable. Again, there was an unpleasant pang from Zenovia seeing his sheer aptitude for the holy element. With it, the memory of his sword mastery came. Just who was Issei Hayadu? Slinging off his pack, he dug into it. Hungry, a little. Similarly, Asia was set onto her cloak atop the grass. Oh, Irina's mom made me something. I really missed her cooking. European food was rather rare in his area of Ku. In heaven, he only ate Mitlet's Japanese cooking or Gabriel's baking. The latter was actually quite bad at cooking. Who are you wasn't a good way to ask for answers, the brunette supposed. So, with that in mind, she asked another. Irina's file said she was from some place like Kohi, Japan or something. Is that where you're from? He passed her a small plating. Yeah, Ku, Japan. Zenovia wasn't quite sure how to read his expression before he continued. She was still my childhood friend, one of my few friends. There was silence as they continued eating. Finishing the last of her portion, she glanced back to her companion. Friends. She rolled the word over her tongue, tying her long hair back. What would you deem a friend? Comrades. He bit the noodles he was slurping on. Not necessarily. A friend can be many things. Irina was my playmate and really the only person I interacted with as a child before I met Gabriella. Someone you enjoy being around and vice versa, I guess. There was a bit of silence before a familiar voice reverberated through his soulscape. What am I supposed to do? I don't know, partner. The Red Dragon Emperor hasn't ever been an angel before. Just thought I should mention the impure nature of your words, I guess. He frowned. What exactly makes Irina and Gabriel? Hey, Zenovia. If she was surprised at the sudden words, she didn't show it as she nodded, bouncing her blue ponytail. Sorry to deceive you. Issei stood, eyes closed, and his jacket forgotten in the wind. Forgive me, for I would not feel right to hide myself from this one who has seen me. Gabriel, father. Zenovia's bright brown eyes couldn't believe what they were seeing. Issei's brown hair peeled away, flecks of light disappearing in the air, to reveal a regal blonde. Once his hair finished changing, a halo, blinding in the shade of the trees, appeared before 8 white wings unfurled themselves with 2 great beats. He was the angel, after all. She focused onto his face. It took everything she had to not gasp as glowing emerald eyes stared down her. Forgive me, Zenovia. He approached her, blinking at her in bewilderment. Your eyes, he wiped her tears once again, are golden. Zenovia didn't know how to interpret that since her eyes were always a vibrant brown. However, she simply brushed it aside as her knees felt like they've suddenly turned to dust. There was an unfamiliar throbbing in the air. Her eyes widened as she realized it was Durandal who was calling to her from the alternate space that was its sheath. It wasn't much longer until she buckled before falling, dragging him down with her, unintentionally. Forgive me, my lord. Although, him being an angel explained a lot. You're quite all right. Issei's many wings shielded her from the outside world while he held her, helping her down. The angel moved to kneel before her, matching but opposite to her. Upon his expression sat a pleased smile. You'll be okay, Zenobia. Said girl couldn't remember the last time she went without blinking for so long. In fact, he had been with her the whole time. Her hands trembled at the implications. Before she knew it, a familiar pommel was in her right hand, waking it from her stupor. In her left, the blade laid still, which was unlike any other time. It was at peace in her hands for once. Durandal, Issei gave a small nudge. It wanted to comfort you. Of course, he would be able to pull it from a space only she should be able to reach into. She was neither spiteful or jealous at his ability to do so as her left hand slid near the edge. The action marred her reflection with dirt. It, however, did not dirty the radiance or beauty of the golden edge. Thank you, my lord. His voice was soft with sternness. Holy swords such as these are a part of you as the air we breathe. Ingrain Durandal's being into your soul and it'll come to accept you. It'll take a while. He withheld his wry smile. Maybe it didn't work how then by extension his soul accepted Ascalon and vice versa. Like it did for Ascalon and he patted her head identical to the ones Gabriel would do to him. Do not forget this feeling. Of course, my lord. She weld the feeling together and seared it into her mind. It would be something to dissect and figure out later. The brunette then gathered the selfishness into her throat. May I ask one more question? He cut her off, of course. She brushed it off. A hand went to rub fondly her inherited sword to gather courage. Can I be your friend? His smile widened. His hair faded to brown. His eyes followed in suit. And he threw the question right back at her. Can I be your friend? He didn't wait for an answer as he packed up his supplies, jacket, and picked the man right up. He put a finger to his smiling lips. SHHH. Come, let's continue. Their path was towards the meeting point. Hopefully, Grisela and Irina weren't having any trouble. Sister Quarta, I see them. Irina trailed off, noticing the strange shape of who she assumed to be Issei. The brunette felt Zenobia rather than saw. Such was based on the tingle of her Excalibur mimic sensing another Excalibur shard. She could only strain her eyes uselessly at the distance, awaiting her orders. The older sister thanked the younger girl, beckoning her to follow the sword master towards them. As they did, Grisela voiced their descriptions. They're both carrying a person each. Young Hayatu with a male exorcist, young Wada with a nun. Correction, young Quarta with the missing holy maiden. She turned to the flabbergasted Irina. Faster, young Shidu. Why yes, instructor. Grisela withheld the urge to correct her as they neared. Not before long, the two mystery people were laid out before the group. Irina passed a water bottle to her fellow trainees. The brunette downed her water in one go. Keeping pace with Issei was harder than she'd ever admit. However, the competition, in her eyes, was worth it. Issei sat beside Irina, listening to her report as he watched their senior exorcist examine the bodies and talk to her younger sister. At first, there was nothing, which of itself isn't anything really. She slapped his shoulder. Don't give me that face, mister. There was a huff before she continued. Then, we ran into a nun, Sister Francine, who had been looking for the Holy Maiden. Imagine my surprise when she said she's been missing for 2 days and she pops up with you guys. Well, thankfully you found her. So, anyway, we asked about any weird things. She said there hadn't been anything too. We added searching for the Holy Maiden to our checklist of things of interest. Oh, Sister Grisela taught me some stuff, so I have some new things to try out while training. So then, cut into an hour or so later, there were a few upset spirits. We calmed them by asking them what was wrong and rectifying a child's mistake. Thankfully, it was just children being a little naughty. Issei glanced at her reminiscing smile with his own. Hey, I'm not the bad one. He rolled his eyes. Why aren't you talking? He felt shy, feeling multiple pairs of eyes on him. His gaze drifted over to the trees, where the sun was setting. I wanted to hear you talk. Her hands went to one of her twin tails, fumbling hair between her fingers. It's your turn to share. Her violet eyes gestured out to their other companions. I'm curious to hear your side too, young Hayatu. The older woman gestured out to Zenobia. Young Zenobia is quite awful at reporting. Said girl only grimaced into her third water bottle, turned away. However, she would listen and take mental notes of what her fellow trainees said and how they said it. She truly was bad at reporting. It's not too different from your story, really. A hand went up to his hands to scratch at his cheek. We, Zenobia and I, just ran around for an hour. He racked his brain on how he smelled as a totally normal human. With my heightened senses, I smelled. And so, I just took off in that direction because there was a bad feeling. Although true, it was more like a lingering scent of a devil which was mostly overpowered by the other aforementioned smell. While I was checking over the injured exorcist, an exhausted holy maiden stumbled out from vegetation. I'm glad she could heal him. I would have had to carry him to the nearest hospital or church pretty quickly if he was going to make it. Gesturing to said maiden, he continued. However, healing him from such a mortal wound, plus the drained state she was in, the sister couldn't continue healing him without hurting herself. Refusing to stop, I stepped in and knocked her out after she got him stabilized. I imagine in her exhausted state, she won't be up for a while longer. He coughed into his hand, deciding to summarize the rest. We carried them back here, stopping once for a quick lunch break. So yeah, A hand went over his "Are you okay?" eyes. Irina's grip tightened slightly, glancing back to the exorcist, who was covered in a lot of then to him in concern. He smiled. Yeah, it wasn't his first time seeing that much after all. It wouldn't hold him back. However, Irina neither needed to know or worry about him. He was the angel here. He grew immensely strong so no one would worry about him and so he could protect his family. His treasures, Diedrag liked to say instead. I'm okay. From the corner of his eyes, Grisela was grilling Zenobia for something. Unlike Zenobia, who couldn't look at her older sister, Issei saw her proud expression. While he didn't know the true relationship of the two, they seemed close. His friend noticed the curiosity on his face. They're sisters. He blinked at Irina's input. Dinner was even stranger than the night before, Issei thought so at least. Zenobia had joined Issei and Irina from the bidding of their mentor, later of which had a red embarrassed face as she admonished her parents for the endless questions they asked the upcoming sword maiden and other totally unnecessary things about the brunette. It was cute to watch, was Issei thought. Zenobia, who was initially taken aback by the parents' manners, had found it in herself to relax. She seemed pleased even while she politely answered questions. Needless to say, but Irina was always cute. As he had assumed, her pouty face was the cherry on the cake. Monday morning, Issei. I'll go ask the father for directions. Issei felt his left hand twitch. As he watched Irina walk up to the priest, he had a sinking feeling that he knew wasn't just his possessiveness, since he really no reason to feel as such. They were both none the wiser as the clergyman made a joke at which Irina giggled. It helped him to calm down a little. But he couldn't stamp down the bad feeling he had of the smiling man. What's wrong with me? You're maturing, Issei. He averted his eyes from Irina's figure, feeling guilty. I know that. His mom and dad had already given him the talk. Metla too. An unusual anger bubbled in his core. It's not that. Something's wrong, but I don't know what. Diedrag huffed. He could only assume Issei's angelic biology was messing with the dragon's connection to the world through the boy. Maybe it had to do with the card that had revived Issei. After all, it was still in its testing phase when the dragon forced it into Issei's soul through the gateway so he wouldn't be any help to the brunette. However, if the boy was so adamant, something must be up. It could also be the lack of Gabriel's calming aura, which was finally allowing his dragon energy to act out. Sorry, I'm still having issues with our connection, even after all these years. But, do note your maturing state. You should check in with Gabrielle when you see her. It has been a while since she's drained your arm after all. The broken connection and himself awakening while Issei was just shy of an infant were both major red flags to a bad end. Will do. The dragon only grunted before closing his eyes in the void of the talking to Diedrag served to calm him mentally. However, the boy just couldn't shake off the feeling nor the strain of his left arm, which he hid behind his back. His right hand was holding the arm still. There was a tap on his nose. Issei, why are you so tense? So, focused on calming his arm, he lost sight of his surroundings and where he was a moment. He waited till the clergyman closed the door behind before he revealed his throbbing left arm. His eyes were still closed as he pulled up his sleeve. Irina gasped at his veiny arm. Unable to help herself, she gathered his trembling fist into her hands. Her touch was light but warm. Is there anything I can do? He gritted out a harsh no. Do you think the holy maiden can help? That was assuming she awake. Either way, he did not know. I don't know. Holding him by his tense hand, she let him. The purple-eyed girl was oblivious to the effort it took for him to not crush her fragile hand in his grasp. He absolutely refused to do so. It wasn't a matter of if, when or but. It wouldn't hurt to try. Knock knock. Oh, yes, come in. Asia's lovely voice rang out. Excuse us, Irina said for the pair as they entered. She noticed the tenseness in Issei's jaw and decided it would be best to talk for him as well. The nearly barren room had just a simple desk, bed and window. Beside the bed, an out-of-place chair sat facing away. On the bed, a girl tilted her head at them. You both missed Miss Quarta. Oh no, my friend is in pain. Irina stepped out away from in front of Issei, who couldn't describe his feelings. The calming aura she seemed to exude only affected him. He didn't know why, and it made him feel oddly shy. Oh, I remember you. The healer slid out of the bed. The first thing she did was grasp both of his hands into her own pair. Then, her innocent eyes blasted him with an awesome amount of purity. Thank you for helping me out of the forest. Through it all, he realized, his arm was still tense but no longer throbbing feverishly. Miss Quarta told me you carried me out of the forest she blushed slightly, that I got lost in after getting chased by a monster. Her line of sight trailed down to their hands. Excuse me. It's okay. He glanced down to his left hand. The dragon energy seeping out of it, invisible to the eyes, was pooling around Asia's hands. Never had he seen such a magical moment. Seeing his gaze, Asia blinked, feeling some kind of mystic sensation around her palm. It reminded her of the few sessions she had to learn a better way of using. However, unlike the complicated math and willing her will, it felt like impossibly fine sand, aggressive as it left her and easy in her palms. She wasn't sure what to call the feeling of it in her hand. However, she didn't dislike it. On a whim, she activated her rings. The light from it encased the energy, revealing it to Irina's stunned eyes. Mr. Issei. Her expression was in curious wonderment as it peered up to the said boy. I know this feeling. One so strong, I can feel it through our broken link. You're in the presence of a dragon tamer. I'm feeling better already. The energy dispersed into the air around Asia as she deactivated her rings. Oh, how wonderful. Fortunately for Issei, the maiden didn't prod him for info. Thank you, Irina cried out as she inspected his arm up and down. You wouldn't believe his crazy tense face. Although, it vanished as soon as he saw you. Issei wasn't sure how to read her expression. Do you have a crush on her? No, I just met her. The immense blush that bloomed on his face didn't help his case. She poked his cheek. Are you sure? He swatted her offending hand away. Yeah. What is a crush? The two bickering teens froze. It's nothing. Whether Asia knew or not, her lips formed a pout as she turned away from them. Interacting with people her age like this was rare. She honestly didn't know how she should be acting around them. Yet, she knew she wanted to get along with them, especially the boy. There was just something else about him. Lost in her thoughts, she was jolted out when a hand reached her shoulder. Sorry for startling you. The warm boy smiled. I just wanted to say thanks. He bowed. Thank you, holy maiden. She wasn't sure what had overcome her, but the words forced themselves out her throat. Call me Asia. Hey, please call me Asia. She tried. Her fortitude faltered as she fiddled with her fingers. He glanced to Irina, who feverishly nodded. Oh, okay, Asia. He rubbed his arm. You don't have to call me Mr. Issei. We're of similar ages. No. He offered a hand. Just eyes is fine, Asia. Let's be friends. As expected, as someone as socially awkward as he was, Asia shook it with both hands in a vigor that surprised even herself. Ooh, I'm feeling left out. Please don't. I want the warrior nun threw an arm over Issei's shoulder. I'm Irina Shido. Issei laughed first. Asia's giggles followed as she took Irina's hands into her own. Irina only grinned wider, shaking Asia's hands. However, Irina froze in realization. Eyes. We need to go. Oh, right. Bye-bye. See ya, Asia. Bye, friend. With that, they took off. Out the door, which was already near the infirmary the head priest had said Grisela was in, they advanced quickly. Sorry, for acting weirdly lately, His gaze was away from her as he scratched his cheek. In response, the girl could only hug him from behind in his embarrassment. I'm just happy you're back to being Issei. At that moment, she felt especially giddy. A tiny hint of jealousy she felt back in the room long forgotten. He whispered something so low below his breath that Irina could only catch the end of it. Pie to be with you. The smile on her face hurt for next few moments. Sir, you must stay in bed. This startled the teen pair. So much so, they chose not to knock but instead, listen in on the conversation. I must warn the holy maiden. She's in danger. Grisela's voice cut into the recovering exorcist. She is safe. Sister Quarta. He sounded surprised. Sorry. There was shuffling heard from the room. The darn devils wiped out my squad. Hearing that from outside the room in the hallway, Issei closed his eyes, sending a prayer with a moment of silence. Irina followed his lead, withholding her tears as she mentally placed herself in the exorcist's shoes. Zenobia was strangely absent since he couldn't sense Durandal's hidden presence or the destruction Excalibur fragment, which would have been sealed within the holy cloth anyway. He shook his head and tapped his best friend's shoulder. We can wait for Sister Grisela in the coffee room. He didn't want her to listen to all of that anymore. It would only worry her unnecessarily. He bit his lip, seeing it across her sad face. The brunette only released a small sound of affirmation, MH. Then, to his surprise, she reached for his hand as he took the lead. Is your arm really okay now? Yeah. They traveled in silence. The coffee room was more like a mini kitchen and seemed like an afterthought. It was wide enough for two people to walk by one another, three if they really squeezed by one another. One side had all the counters and utilities. The other side was just a long wall of various verses. At the end of the room, there was a small square table with 3 chairs and one window looking on northeast. The 4th chair Issei had noticed in the Holy Maiden's room. Issei let go of Irina's hand to open the fridge. There's some apple juice. Want some? Yeah, she replied, absent-mindedly, on her way to the table. He frowned internally as he made his way towards the paper cups. You know, Irina, I will always be there in your darkest moments. The edge of his vision saw the sitting girl glance up to him then back down to her lap. He got no response otherwise. The tension only seemed to thicken as he approached with the cups in hand. Here you go, Iri-chan. He trailed, noticing he defaulted to her childhood nickname. Thank you, eyes. Irina started with the cup hiding behind her lips. For everything, I mean. The angel couldn't stop the blinding smile from his expression. It wasn't much. At that, the newly appointed warrior nun averted her amethyst eyes. She wasn't quite done. But you're leaving tomorrow, right? The smile didn't so much as twitch before he responded with yep, but I promise to visit again. Following that, he downed his cup in one go. Irina watched as he crushed the cup with ease before recycling it. I'll miss your mom's cooking. She tuned him out, unintentionally, drowning in her worries and thoughts. Being a warrior nun gave her even more responsibilities. She had heard of a few stories, some from her dad, others from her teachers or books. A few stuck out as they hadn't ended well, except for the fact they had been reincarnated. However, it was no secret angels, or even the father himself, haven't been as active as had once been. People like the Holy Maiden or even Zenobia were so revered because of this. They just had to be blessed. She, Irina Shidu, on the other hand, was just another girl from a Far East country. Some of her classmates or fellow mentees had teased her for it. Always, she'd ignore it all. But, in her heart, she agreed. She was no one special. She didn't deserve the Excalibur fragment. She didn't deserve learning under the Grisela Quarta. She didn't deserve partnering up with the upcoming sword maiden, Zenobia. Because she was no one special in her position, people would die. Comrades would die. She would die. Irina looked up to Issei's concerned face. She didn't deserve this. Angel, Irina, what's wrong? Like Issei, she downed the cup in one gulp, then clapped both her cheeks before crushing the cup. She'd be darned if she didn't work herself raw to the bone so she could stand by each and every one of them, proudly. She'd right by them. It would take a lot of time, a ton of heavy lifting, and a lot of mistakes to reach the top of the mountain to the pearly gates she set for herself. However, she'd gladly do it. Issei had done it, after all. Or well, she assumed, anyway. Sorry, I'm okay now. Her eyes sparkled in the rays of the rising sun as her smile lit the whole room. Yosh, I got a lot of work to do. Issei couldn't say anything when his 8 wings unfurled themselves and his halo replaced itself over his head. His hair and eyes, however, did not change this time. He could feel Irina as he now stood across from her. Wave after wave, her faith washed over him in droves. It was such an enlightening feeling that his body reacted without him any the wiser. Such has never happened before. He needed to reach the source. Drake awoke, feeling his partner's power flare slightly. Irina, his eyes, still their soft chocolate color, stared her down. He could feel Irina's potential, her dreams, her worries, her devotion, her everything. He furled his wings into his back and hid his halo so he wouldn't knock anything over or be revealed as an angel. The living hybrid made his way towards Irina. Issei. The girl's knees were on the verge of giving once more. To catch her, Issei brought her into his arms and embraced her. I got you. Even though his eyes were closed, their glow leaked, fading into nothingness after a short distance. His left hand twitched. With that notice going unquestioned, he shoved Irina behind him, spun on a heel and threw up a quick barrier before him with a flick of his wrist. Then, the entrance of the room exploded. The dark energy that had destroyed it continued until it hit Issei's barrier, which only flickered once on impact. The feeling it irradiated was nearly exact to the description Michael had given him. Irina, there's a devil. He ignored her gasp, holding up her wrist that had Excalibur, mimicking a cutesy bracelet form. Don't reveal it yet. She nodded and he stepped out his barrier. Stay here. This devil-san is pretty strong. He was pretty strong himself. Michael, Midalt, and Gabriel had said so. However, this was his first time fighting an actual devil. His arms went behind him to hide the appearance as he summoned his sword. With a flex, the scarlet dematerialized as fast as it appeared. With that done, he focused on fighting and protecting. Midalt sometimes compared him to a robot with his laser focus. Oh, how I miss her. Oh, I thought only the Sword Master, Sword Maiden, and Holy Maiden were here. As the dust started to settle, a feminine shadow appeared, approaching them slowly. The figure was odd, given that the voice distinctively belonged to a male. No matter, you're just a boy in G, only to be blasted by a ray of holy energies. It wasn't Issei's light though. Leading the charge at the other end of the room, Grisela stood with her knees bent, one hand behind her, holding some sword Issei assumed, and one arm outstretched towards the shadowy figure, charging more holy energies. Behind her, the formerly injured exorcist drew out his holy light sword and light pistol. To his side, stood the young nurse and the holy maiden, both covered in but seemingly unharmed, just rattled. The sword master's blast was just a distraction. It was weak enough that it wouldn't destabilize the room further nor pierce through and hit Issei. With the opening her attack made, Grisela yelled out, "Young Hyaudu, is young Shidu still with you?" "Yes, I'm safe," said girl called out from behind him. Her eyes never leaving the figure, Grisela continued, "The situation, the head priest was killed, and a fake took over. He's captured now. Bah, that's you get for relying on humans, am I right?" The figure turned out to be some kind of 3D shadow familiar in the vague shape of a tall woman. Its voice was to be assumed to be its master's voice. That assumption seems off though, Issei thought, furrowing his brows. The living shadow took a step. A wave of holy energy flew from Ascalon in that instant. However, unlike Grisela's blast, it didn't have an actual impact. Instead, it burned away the shadow. Although, not his intention, the axe served to reveal a woman in a nun's outfit. It wasn't a familiar but a devil. His grip on his holy sword faltered. The crosses on her skin were burning into her otherwise flawless skin. If that wasn't a sign of being a devil, her scent was a dead giveaway. That wasn't what made him hesitate. He could still feel the faint thrumming of her faith. It was on the edge of hopelessness. It was just nauseating to bask in. Then, a realization hit him again. She was a devil. As an angel, there was nothing he could do. As a junior exorcist in training, there was nothing he could do. As a young teen, there was nothing he could do. As another living being, there was absolutely nothing he could do help her. Young Hyaudu. He met her eyes. Hers were wide in fright and yet awfully dull. Her hopelessness wasn't unwarranted, but it broke his heart to even think so. He averted his eyes first, turned away as he threw her towards Grisela, dislocating her arm. He didn't even need to try to block the nun's fist with his throbbing left hand. But, he did so anyway, mustering just enough motivation to do so. He felt sick just touching her. He was unsuccessful in tuning out Grisela's takedown as the devil fought only half-heartedly. Not once did she gasp, groan, or spit in pain. She seemed to, however, pant heavily through her nose. Although, now with said nose broken, the devil nun struggled to even breath while she stood before Grisela once more. He blocked Irina's view of the fight further by getting into a faux stance. Why? He watched a frustrated saint put away her weapons. The devil nun only brought her trembling and bruised fists up for another punch that they all knew wouldn't land. Grisela folded the young lady over her fist and slammed her into the ground with an elbow. To repent, I'll give you one more chance. The devil didn't stir but was still breathing. Grisela bent at her knees and watched a wisp of shadow write something into the ground. Against her better judgment and teachings, she refrained from blasting both the she-devil and the wisp. Get away. Issei, get away. In his mind, Middle's scream of his name broke his heart once more. She was telling him to go. He nor Gabriel never saw her again. Issei shot forward, but he knew with his distance, it would be in vain. Just like last time, the hesitation he showed should have tripped him, but he had just shoved his foot through the flooring and caught himself, smashing said foot down, only for the explosion to crash into him. It swallowed the kitchen, blasting Issei against his barrier, and Grisela's hasty shielding shattered, leaving her body in enchanted clothing to protect her charges. Sister. The exorcist Issei had carried, however, had recognized this scene and pulled Grisela before throwing her towards the two girls behind them. Truly, it was amazing for him to do so while injured in an instant. However, what the exorcist didn't know was that he had disrupted Grisela's focus. It caused her to drop the wards on her body and fail to crack the first seal of many across her back. Never mind the idea of yet another person throwing their life away. No, you. Issei, Issei, Issei. Issei shot to his feet. His gaze swept over Irina, who stopped banging against his cracked barrier. Her face gained a red hue and she could only point at his lower body, looking away. It caused him to blink, taking in his body. He had a few scratches, covered in and was mostly naked. The whole front portion of his body was revealed. Otherwise, he was in fighting condition. Explosions made from a person's life force were never a joke. Okay, Irina's safe and I'm fine. Where are the others? He tore a piece of the curtain from the window within his barrier. Ignoring his friend's wishes to release her once she got over her embarrassment, he covered his crotch. Then, he stepped back out after reinforcing his cracked barrier. Hurrying towards the direction he saw Grisela last, his eyes spotted another figure. Another devil nun. She was standing over the injured and nearly naked Grisela. The senior warrior nun's legs were punctured with long pieces of stone from the building. The devil's expression was blank during the whole ordeal. A beam sword made from devilish energies flickered in her hands, pointed towards the unimpressed swordmaster. Some distance behind them, Asia scrambled onto her feet and ran as fast as she could to shield her savior with her body. There was a sound of a chain breaking as the glowing wing seal on Issei's chest reappeared. 2 feathers of the 7 lost their glow. Then, it vanished as fast as it appeared. Paying it no mind, he picked up his sword. He wouldn't make the same mistakes thrice. He sucked in a breath, just before his presence flickered forward. A beam of light swallowed the devil nun as Issei beheaded the devil with a wide swing. In it all, no traces of the she-devil remained. The angel closed his eyes, spreading out his awareness of the world. The only sounds were the crackling of electronics and outlets exposed to spraying water from broken pipes and the covered bricks still falling apart around them. Finding nothing else, he let his sword fade into mist. All of that was done on an instant. Forcing the speed in his current state was pushing himself a bit. It caused his chest to heave with heavy breaths. That, however, also led to Grisela to believe he was pressuring himself to do such outrageous feats. Sister Asia, please go help young Issei. Her reasoning was that healing her legs would take too long. She was already stabilized, as well as a person could be with fragments piercing through her nimble legs. They needed Issei to be in top condition just in case other devils served as reinforcements. The healer looked conflicted. Grisela was rapidly losing, nearly nude in her paleness and probably a little delirious. But it was Asia's duty to listen to a higher-up. It would be a first for her to have second thoughts about a request. To her, the boy the blessed nun of white, a title akin to her moniker, wanted her to heal seemed to be fine. He ignored his left arm's slight throbbing. It was much more manageable with 1 seal of 4 released. At that moment, it was absorbing all his locked emotions and turning it into dragon energy. Instead, he looked up to the disheveled Asia, then to the nurse. Help Grisela first, please. The blonde healer, who had already decided to do so, nodded vigorously. The nurse quickly made her way towards the injured exorcist, who showed no signs of pain. Instead, Grisela only gave him a leveled look. He ignored it. He waved a hand towards his barrier, finally dispelling it. Irina, finally seeing the barrier dissipate, rapidly approached him. Slap. Issei allowed his face to turn with Irina's bruised hand. You idiot. I didn't. Young Shidu. Irina's tearful gaze ripped itself from his being. Come here. The swordmaster patted the space beside her. Yes, Sister Quarta. Grisela's sharp gaze watched the girl kneel beside her. Satisfied with that, she raised her gaze back onto Issei. You too, Hayaru. She patted the other side. He nodded, welding his eyes shut before kneeling beside Asia, who watched the ordeal from the corners of her eyes. The sheltered nun neither knew what to if she should say anything. It was her first time in an uninitiated combat zone during combat. But she knew friends weren't supposed to fight. The elder sister pulled Issei into her bosom. I've prayed many times over that people like you two will never have to go through this. It's just a fleeting wish, I suppose. She ruffled Issei's wild hair. Thank you, Issei Hayaudu. She felt him stiffen. You can let it out. His whole body shuddered. Why? He wasn't questioning her words, but rather the devil's. Their attire, more importantly. He's never killed a human, whether reincarnated or not. It was similar to her own why earlier. I don't know. Grisela hid her wince when Issei wrapped his strong arms around her. Then, her line of sight shifted back to Irina, who began burying herself in guilt once more. The sword master reached for Irina's hand, the one she used to slap Issei. I understand it was unfair of him, but he was really scared. But, was she not allowed to be afraid for him as well? She literally watched on uselessly as he was blasted against his own barrier. It cracked against his body, whereas her enhanced strength could do nothing to it. There's no question that he's much stronger than you or even Zenovia, dear. The pulled Irina's head beside Issei's, brushing a hand through her untouched hair. He fell asleep, but refused to cry. Just how strong is he? She paused to let her words sink into Irina. Did you know he's the type to always be on edge? I don't think he sleeps much with all his twitching I see from him. Irina didn't say anything as she thought about how easily he No, she hadn't seen him sleep. It was her who practically passed out upon hitting the bed. Her heart dropped. She had even selfishly decided to wake him up. It didn't occur to her that in this case, it was the excitement of just being with her. For someone his age, he must have been through something truly heartbreaking. Irina felt her eyes water, but the suddenly motherly sister continued undeterred. He needs you more than he'd like to admit, Irina. This one time please forgive him. All the while, her slender hands brushed through both their mixed-matched brown locks. Irina's amethyst eyes, peeking over Grisela's, met her mentor's azure eyes. The teenager gulped. I used to be stronger and faster than Issei. He was just she bit down the exact word her mentor had used to describe him, a civilian. My previous mentor said it best to cut off all contact with him, so I did. I should be asking for forgiveness instead. Never mind the fact, she dared to raise a hand to an angel. That fact she hid behind her determined look. Now, he's shining so bright. I need to catch up. And you will, or am I wrong? The older woman's expression seemed to say, I'm never wrong. And no, I will get stronger. There was a small smile on the elder's lip, indeed. She pulled Irina back into her bosom. I had made sure this place was safe but asking others, but clearly, the information was all wrong. I fear there's even more defectors. The devil nuns wouldn't go unremembered. While it's not completely my fault, I still ask for forgiveness as well. Why, you're of no fault, Sister Grisela. At that, said exorcist gave a small chuckle before glancing to her legs. The nurse who had left to get some supplies was now wrapping her legs with bandages. The blonde user was catching her breath. Thank you both as well. Thank you, Sister Quarta, said woman closed her eyes. Irina, there was a small sound of affirmation. I do have 2 requests. I need you to stay alert and to wake Issei at any sign of danger. Her legs were already feeling better. While it was possible for her force herself to walk, it might come with unforeseen consequences. She, as powerful as she was but human. The night before she spent prodding Zenovia for information on the boy and preparing for the next article and video for her bi-daily schedule. She hadn't expected uncovering a kidnapped holy maiden nor fairly strong devil nuns of all kinds of devils. The angel her younger sister met in the forest that killed the beast had reinforced the fact that there were strong people at work. And so, she decided to focus solely on their training, even going as far as to seal herself 2 nights before so she wouldn't hurt Irina unnecessarily. As the young Shidu learned under her, she would release her seals. Zenovia, on the other hand, was used to the bruises and brushes with death. However, it wouldn't be fair to compare the two. I need to rest for a bit. Irina was released from her hold. Of course, Mentor Quarta, leave it to me. A ping resounded through her dreams. Zenovia, surprising the girls, one of which was still working on her legs, the swordmaster shot up. Her hand that was still holding Issei waved over him, washing a miracle over him. He wouldn't waking up any time soon unless she allowed it. She tossed him over her left shoulder. Through the ordeal, the boy twitched only once. If he was a normal trainee, she wouldn't be so lenient. Especially since he was a temporary addition and one made on the whims of her fellow saint, underground Saint Shidu. She assumed the second part at least. She could understand why he would expedite the chain of command for Issei though. The strongest nun of the church felt her first step wobble. By her second, she showed no sign of weakness. Come, we need to relocate to the inn. Zenovia is in trouble. The 3 girls nodded. She ignored the surprised cry of the nurse, who was tossed over her other shoulder. Irina, carry the holy maiden. Why yes, the girl ended up holding the flustered blonde in a bridal hold, aided by a concealed, weightless miracle from the swordmaster. As stated before, Irina's speed was one not to be underestimated for her age. Grisela would rely on it. Good, I hope you can keep up, dear. As they ran, the first saint of the modern age relayed her plan. I will switch with Zenovia, leaving both of you to protect these 3, okay? Yes, through it all, an area above her nether regions panged with a phantom pain that served as a reminder worse than any pain she felt before. It was something that drove her to become a nun, the strongest or even the blessed nun of the storm people would say. You cannot bear children. She refused to let her next step to falter at the memory. Instead, she released 2 seals out of 7 that lay still hidden across her back. It would be time to get serious. Training was over, and the well-being of her charges took precedence. With just 2 seals deactivated, her divine presence and energy started to trickle from her. However, it was only noticeable if Gryzla stayed put for a few minutes. It would gather and visibly cloud the area. Otherwise, it didn't relay her presence unless one was sensitive to it or actively searched for. Given that the devils seemed to brainwash humans in such a way to bypass her passive inhuman scouter, they might be. It was a chance she'd take. The ping echoed once more. Her dear sister needed her. She hoped Zenobia would survive long enough, like the day the foolish girl decided to train alone after being told not to. Her younger sister was lucky there was some wandering exorcist culling the forest. Gryzla refused to believe the outrageous claim that an angel revealed themselves to Zenobia, noting it mentally as something the blue-haired girl made up, feeling embarrassed. Like a dog eating her homework. She, however, was blind to Issei's leaking divinity. Ugh. Issei froze mid-stretch at the sound of Asia's unfamiliar voice. Oh, good evening, eyes. His eyes flew open. Evening. The weight on his legs shifted before it. She groaned. Eyes. It's 2. Irina's frame shot up, before bowing at his bedside. I am so sorry for slapping you, eyes. The slap hadn't hurt physically as it did mentally, but he could understand her frustration with him, to a degree. He hadn't meant to undermine her drive and strength by shielding her. He simply couldn't stomach seeing Irina nor anyone he knew intimately in pain. Not again. At his many thoughts, his left arm throbbed, turning his emotions into dragon energy. I forgive you. He patted her head, lightly. Ah, I'm sorry, too. Irina surprised him with a hug. You have nothing to sorry for, eyes. Feeling him return it, she giggled. She couldn't help it. Hugging him just felt so elating. And she missed it greatly. Her giggles reverberated through him. The feeling was reminiscent of when he felt Irina's soul, but this time, he felt it physically. It caused him to giggle right along. Eri-chan's giggles are always contagious. Unbeknownst to him, his left arm was no longer throbbing. Meanwhile, Asia was trying her hardest to force her sneeze down. Crinkling her nose cutely in every which way, she slammed her eyes shut, held her breath. Nothing was working. Oh no. Shoo. Her eyes widened as she flushed harshly at their frozen figures. You were sorry. Suddenly, 2 pairs of hands held hers. Thank you for your hard work. Irina's amethyst eyes peered into her moss-green eyes. In each other, they both liked what they saw, smiling at one another. What a beautiful soul. Good evening, friend. She looked up to Issei's smiling eyes, which she was sure was previously brown, but were currently emerald. The girl withheld the urge to hold her still heating cheeks with her hand that she just noticed was in a boy's hand. Good evening again, I guess, hi, eyes. At her mistake, she averted her eyes, shyly, unsure if she should draw her hands away. That's so cute. The 2 trainees glanced at one another. As Irina's eyes turned away, they twinkled. How is it to be the holy maiden? She thought she'd be less nervous if the blonde talked about herself. The girl shifted uncomfortably in her chair. She didn't know where to begin nor what she could say. Did I ask something insensitive? No. Sorry, The nun really tried to keep eye contact with Irina, but to avail. However, in averting her gaze, she met Issei's and his smile. He gave a small nod. There's a lot to say, she offered, meekly. We have all day. If you don't mind telling us about yourself. I don't mind, pumping a mental fist up at her lack of stuttering. She continued with the added confidence that only trickled in continuing, if you tell me about you. Once more the exorcist in training shared a look and gaze. Irina's joyous personality infected them all. Of course, after all, Asia could feel the smile on her lips. Well, late night, Issei. Standing ahead of Issei, his best friend stood, hands clasped together behind her. This is it, Irina. Issei. The way the words rolled off his tongue made his skin tingle. Irina. Issei. Stissei. His nose crinkled at the offending object touching it, until realized he was suddenly brought out of his sleep. However, the familiar smell made his reaction much more docile. Irina watched her childhood recoil harshly into his pillow behind him. It would have been if not for the near vice grip on her wrist. However, unconsciously, he had released her while blinking up at her in question. Perhaps Sister Gryzla was onto something. The ugly feeling of guilt inflamed her core again. She hid in behind her back, ignoring the pain and brushing off the guilt, for it wasn't her fault, like Gryzla said. Instead, she would smile. Good morning, sleepyhead. It was part of her that Issei was always looking out for. His cheeks went warm at the sight of Irina. Good morning. Her false smile widened slightly, seeing him avert his eyes, although she could feel her cheek grow warm at the implications. Her dad already gave her the talk and made sure she knew to watch out for boys, even if she was already stronger than most of them. She wasn't blind to them or the growing jealousy from other girls her age, which was why she requested to join the mentorship program. Unlike them, Issei wouldn't stare or ogle at her budding body in her loose-fitting tank top and soft pajama shorts. She ignored her embarrassment. Sorry to wake you. It's okay. The last memory of his dreams returned to him. To Irina, she thought the darkening of his blush was due to one of the straps falling over her shoulder. It's just that you're leaving tomorrow, right? The girl got a nod and she continued as she pulled shirt back over her slim shoulder. I wanted to show you something on the roof if you mind. The boy slipped off the covers and shot to his feet. Oh sure. Immediately, he took her wrist and dragged her off in such an Issei-like manner Irina couldn't help but giggle even if stifled. Even if through the pain. It helped that he joined her in her quieted laughter. Suddenly, he came to a stop ahead of her. As he turned to her, his other hand came up to his cheek. I don't know how to get to the roof. That fact slipped her mind too. Again, she couldn't stop the giggle bubbling up her throat. It's not funny. It only worsened the laughter she was struggling to contain. BFFT, sorry, she totally wasn't sorry, it just reminded me of our first sleepover. Oh geez, that was so long ago. Issei paused, as Irina took the lead. We're so old. We're not. You're not even like the same height as Papa. Well, he's actually super tall, you know. Well, you got me there. It's been like 7 years and 4 months. I know 'cause I counted as I waited for a letter back besides that one. The hand holding his tightened. The physical contact between them changed. He didn't mean to make her sad. I'm sorry, eyes. As guilty as he felt for the current atmosphere, it did feel nice to hear an apology at her silence through the years. He decided not to question her about it. However, he didn't know what to say now. The rest of the way to the roof was as silent as it was uneventful. Once the pair made it there, Irina took a seat upon the tiles and padded next to her. Without a thought, he joined her. Although, unlike her, he lay back, watching his glowing gaze over the night sky. Because that, he missed her rubbing her wrist. Seeing the movement of her arms, he thought she was instead fiddling with her fingers. Something like a nervous habit, he supposed. My instructor, before Sister Quarta, was really strict and told me that only becoming a nun mattered. My dad didn't like her, but I told him not to worry and that I could handle myself. I think I got pretty strong because of her. I'm not using it as an excuse. She turned her whole body to face him, still hiding the wrist from view. Her tearful gaze, unlike the one from earlier that day, met his glowing eyes. I really missed you a lot. She bowed. It was so deep her forehead touched the tiles beside him. I'm sorry, Issei. He bit his lip. He had almost responded to it immediately, brushing it off. He had gotten over it by promising to himself to see her again. But to brush it off would undermine her heartfelt apology and emotions, those of which he understood were under lock and key before he came. While it seemed like an hour had passed in silence, it was but a few seconds before he decided. He pulled her into his chest, his arms holding her very loosely. You have no excuse now, do you? Her head shook side to side against him. I forgive you. There was no hiccups or heavy sobs as his pajama shirt became wet against his chest. To it, he said nothing, just holding her still. His arms allowed her to leave him. Sorry about your shirt. Although, immediately, goosebumps trickled onto her skin. It was rather chilly out. Her cheeks reddened at her next thought. And, Issei is always warm. His warm hand suddenly latched against her wrist. Her eyes widened. She had forgotten. This is just... He didn't respond to her words, focusing his piercing gaze on the purple skin. Shortly after, the warmth from his hand expanded, encasing her bruised wrist. Sorry, it's okay, really, Issei. She held his hand between both of hers. Don't beat yourself up for something you can't control. He seemed to freeze at her words. Okay. She clapped both his cheeks. Let's finally get to the thing I wanted to while up here. The playful smile on her lips tugged a tiny bit wider at the sight of his smaller one. Okay. The boy went to rise, but she pushed him back down, which was actually harder than she thought it would be for 2 reasons. The first was that without even trying he was actually just as strong as she was. And the second, oh my days, his abs. She was a growing teen girl after all. The purple-eyed girl hadn't noticed it earlier. While forcing him down, she lost the concentration needed to draw the strength to do so, thinking her cheek-reddening thoughts. Ultimately, it was Issei who let her force her down. However, she wouldn't and didn't let the disparity of their strength get to her. She was past that now. She lay next to him. I learned a lot about the stars. Issei hid his grimace. Gabriel had taught him about them too. Me too. Oh, right. She had forgotten she was speaking to an angel. Her amethyst eyes widened suddenly and her whole face flushed. She had essentially felt up and seduced an angel. Oh no, a forehead met hers. Irina, is something wrong? Thankfully, he was as oblivious as he was socially awkward. That fact brought up a fond memory, one that would never fail to make her laugh. And laugh she did. The physical contact between them flooding him with her emotions once more. Sorry, And so, they shared their memories, the old and new, the good and bad, and reconnected even further. On her wrist, the Excalibur fragment glowed very dimly, absorbing the leaking from Issei and their emotions. Bye everyone. Bye Issei. The Shidu family waved him off as the winds of his beating great wings lifted him. Over it all, Irina could still make out I'll miss you. At that, she mouthed it back, refusing to yell it back in front of her parents. It would be too embarrassing to do so in front of her parents, even if she would eventually tell them what happened and what didn't happen between them. She knew he saw it because he was always watching over her in their time together. Ugh, that means, Mommy's gonna know I kissed high. If possible, the smile was wider than the one he had coming to see Irina. Yup. There was relative silence as he raced through the afternoon sky, until Drake spoke up once more. I've been busy fixing our connection. Apparently, one major problem is that you haven't completely matured yet. Maybe it has to do with your angelic physiology. I see. Thank you for your hard work. That explained why he was sleeping so much, the boy supposed. The dragon only grunted at the honest gratitude. Gabriel, Issei's parents and himself still haven't mentioned how hard he worked to keep him alive. The ancient creature preferred it that way. Nevertheless, it was humbling to have the child thank him. I'll be testing your stamina and speed. Yes, Sister Griselda. Irina's shoes slammed into the ground behind her as she tried her best to catch up to her new mentor, who stayed just out of attacking range. While she wasn't unused to physically demanding programs, the girl couldn't help but hope for a bit of a break. Keeping up with Issei the previous day was way more draining than she had expected. Her muscles were still sore. The soles of her feet still made her want to cringe in each step. Her mind kept wandering off, unable to completely focus on pushing herself. Focus, young Shido. The woman slowed down to match the younger girl's pace. I want you to try something. Oh, okay. The woman slid to a stop and turned around. The girl behind her followed. Though seeing nothing behind her, Irina turned back. Griselda hid a smile at the misinterpretation of her actions. Do you remember how Zenobia drew upon the holy element? The brunette nodded, hesitantly. Seeing that reaction, the nun crouched to the girl's height. I do not know why your previous mentor deemed you unworthy for the element, nor do I know why your father chose not to teach you how to utilize it. Those your age already know the bare basics. Irina stood stock still as she absorbed the words. Oi, I'll be here to give you a speedy course, okay. The motherly nun patted her head. Your physical traits far outclass those your age. Though, your mental facilities are lacking given your talent. Talent? You never wondered why your father asked you to never sing. The girl shook her head. Ah, what a nice girl. However, Griselda's face hardened. Have you been denying yourself? The girl flushed because she had initially misunderstood the wording and fought avoiding her mentor's sharp eyes. In secret, every other night, I'd sneak out to sing. She couldn't help apologizing as she bowed deeply. I am sorry. The teen had never shared that with anyone before. Feeling guilt welled up within her. Averting her chocolatey gaze as she didn't even feel worthy to even look at Griselda's feet, it blurred with unsung tears. She couldn't help it. It felt wrong to hold herself back. Yet, if no one told her it was okay, if she didn't sneak out at least every other night, she'd be so overcome with depression that it would mar the other aspects of her busy life. Like earlier that day, she remembered how sad she was. Since the night before, she was too sleepy, worn out by Issei. She didn't want to consider the fact that she was also too embarrassed to sing in the presence of her childhood friend. Just thinking about it made the red of her round face intensify a little. She was this close to singing to him. Instead, she panicked and brought up the stars. Sharp cerulean eyes softened. You have nothing to apologize for, Irina. The strongest nun pulled her into her arms. If anything, your father knew you would. He's a man. He wouldn't fully understand how it is to be a girl and assumed you'd come to that conclusion yourself. That does sound like Papa. Griselda pulled out from the embrace, locking eyes with her newest mentee. No more sneaking off, okay. The girl nodded, vigorously. I want to hear you sing tomorrow, so prepare yourself. Why yes, Sister Quarta. The nun nodded to herself, stepping away. For today, I'll be pushing you beyond your limits. Standing straight, she put in a fist to her open palm. Despite the mission, there should be no real threats, so we'll be working on the basics of holy reinforcement, your movement, and stamina. Without a warning, Irina was sent to her knees, gasping harshly as she did so. The world around her seemed to disappear as the presence of the strongest nun overtook all her senses. This is what you'll be working towards. Sear it into your memory, young Shido. As the teen girl succeeded in raising her head to face the woman, the demon in nun's cloth hid her smirk. A promising student was in her grasp. Why yes, Sister Quarta. The near-suffocating pressure liberated her. With the suddenness of it, she flung herself backwards accidentally. The girl landed sprawled out on the ground. For now, we will be focusing on imbuing the holy element into your limbs. While it would be dangerous, I have a feeling it'll come naturally for you. The demon-like woman hoped this would help the girl with her confidence issues. Young maidens who were blessed to be born with a sacred hymn tend to have no issues with holy enhancement. That gift doubled down when it came to their own bodies. The only difference was each maiden had to find their own soul song, which would greatly specialize them. Some could heal the soul, some could empower the spirit. Most, however, could cause mass destruction in some capacity. The latter were often mistaken for heretics, devils, or witches. The formers were highly revered as saints or saint-like figures. It was unfair, and as much as it pained her to admit it, that was just how the common human perceived such powers. Taoji Shido, however, hid it all. From the church to his very daughter, they were none the wiser to her true potential. She wasn't made for sword combat. And yet, he said nothing as his daughter started her oath of shed as a warrior nun. And, quite frankly, she did not blame him. Though, it frustrated her to no end to know he hadn't even bothered to teach his daughter anything regarding the holy element or her near-angelic voice. From the way the girl felt immense guilt, there seemed to be no advisories of any sort. Griselda decided she would confront the man later. He had only confided in the nun after finding out she would be Irina's new instructor. The father knew he wouldn't be able to mask it from the strongest woman of the church. The girl picked herself up. Yes, Sister Quarta. Close your eyes and hum a hymn to yourself. The girl did exactly that without any hesitation. Griselda felt her stoic expression twitch at the girl's soothing sounds. Perhaps the repression made it stronger. Maybe that was Taoji's real objective. Nevertheless, repression was never usually a good thing, even if she endorsed it for the church to a degree. She wouldn't stand to see things less than perfect. Her vision of perfection was everything had to be stoic, uniform, and above all else, sinless. The only exceptions were children and those who weren't part of the church. Besides Zenobia, of course. A true sword maiden had to be perfect, even if the blue-haired girl was one in training. Focus. Do you feel the warmth in your chest? There was a glow from Irina's heart, though it was only something the nun could perceive currently. Soon, the girl should be able to see it for herself. However, it wasn't just something the stern woman saw in Irina, but rather, in all people, whether of faith or not. Everyone carried a bit of faith and willpower, after all. Just nod yes or no, the woman said, seeing Irina's mouth open. The girl then closed it and shook her head up and down. Perfect. Continue focusing on your humming. Focus on that warmth. You're doing a great job, young Shidu. Hearing that over her humming made Irina's heart soar. Take a deep breath, lose your doubts, worries, and bring out your unshakable faith. The girl stopped to suck in a sharp breath. Suddenly, silence reigned over all as she stopped. So focused on sharpening her faith, time seemed to slow to a crawl. Her budding chest welled with heat. It felt like the just bearable heat wanted to force itself upwards, out her mouth. However, Grisela had different plans as she inserted herself back into Irina's senses. Slowly, halt your hums and pressure the warmth to your legs. The flame wavered. To help her, Grisela's soft yet powerful prayer took the place of the girl's hums. Lord, make me an instrument of your peace. Where there is hatred, let me sow love. Where there is injury, pardon. Where there is doubt, faith. Where there is despair, hope. Where there is darkness, light. Where there is sadness, joy. The girl's gathered faith trickled to her lower body. There, it pooled up much faster than she intended. But it was workable, she thought as sweat dripped off her brow. It was much easier than expected. Nonetheless, she wouldn't get her hopes up quite yet. O Divine Master, grant that I may not so much seek to be consoled as to console, to be understood as to understand, to be loved as to love. For it is in giving that we receive, it is in pardoning that we are pardoned, and it is in dying that we are born to eternal life. Amen. The energy within her was starting to stabilize. Joy, relief, and reverence filled her being, soul, and mind. The brunette couldn't help herself as she brought her hands together up in prayer. Amen. Open your eyes, young Shidu. Slowly, her perception of the world returned to her. First came Grisela, an insurmountable presence. Then, the environment came to a sway in the afternoon wind. Through it all, her body felt energized, felt unbelievably light. However, all she did was reel in her energy and excitement to match gazes with her instructor. The woman only gave a small smile. Congratulations, you've done it on your first try. Amazingly so. Bending down a bit, she tapped her legs, gesturing for Irina to look at her own pair. The girl nearly gasped as she had almost fallen back in shock. Pulsing up and down her legs, yellow lines appeared. This is it. Yes, now that the hard part is over, we'll go over how to keep it up. The woman held her hands together. It's quite simple. As long as you will it with utmost faith, it won't fail you. She refrained from reinforcing her with words with a promise. Not every battle was one that could be won with faith alone. I see. Again, Grisela's pressure came crashing upon the girl. However, do not overly rely on this power. If you're not careful, you can shatter your bones with overuse. Or, even worse, your limbs can explode. Her instructor's words demanded that Irina make eye contact. For now, you will only use this power when I oversee you. Never without. Why yes, instructor. The girl had defaulted to how she had called her previous mentor in a mild panic. This power must be dangerous, the girl thought. Now, relinquish your hold over that warmth, and let's start from the top again. In the middle of practicing control with Irina's newfound speed, the older woman stopped. It threw off the brunette, causing her to stumble forward. Before she could collide with the strongest nun, said nun held her still. We'll work on your stamina later. It was then that the purple-eyed girl noticed a woman approaching them. Her hair was hidden beneath a dirtied veil, as was the rest of her pale figure in a torn nun attire. Her eyes, a bold green, were wide open, seeing them as Sister Grisela. In her excitement to reach them, she stumbled out the bushes. However, faster than Irina could perceive, her mentor already sped ahead to catch the tripping nun. Sorry, Sister Quarta, The pale woman fainted. Without missing a beat, the woman gathered the unconscious woman into her arms. Bridal style, she's just exhausted, young Shidu. Should we head back to the church? Grisela nodded, quickly. The sharp-eyed nun paused to cast a miracle over the nun, who gained a glow. Prepare yourself. Seeing her mentor wait patiently, Irina drew upon her faith, empowering herself in but a few seconds. I'm ready. Take the lead. I'll follow. Yes, instructor. With that, she shot back from the direction they came from. The girl roared in her thoughts, pushing herself to run faster. She could do it, she thought. She could push herself to endure the entire run to the church. Not too far behind, her fierce mentor sped after her. Nearly 10 minutes into the run, the purple-eyed girl noticed a man approaching them from the trees. His hair was a bright gray, his skin was pale, and his keen eyes, while nowhere as sharp as Grisela's eyes, were pale blue. He wore basic but dirtied exorcist gear, a wide handle to a lightsaber, basic light-based handgun, and a torn book that she couldn't quite make out. Otherwise, the only real out-of-place thing about him was that he looked to be disheveled and out of breath. However, his blue eyes lit up with recognition. As Sister Griselda. Without fail, the nun's very presence demanded the best from everyone. And so, he straightened his back and tried to control his labored breath. Have you seen the Holy Maiden? He then noticed the nun's arms. I is Sister Francine. Okay. Sister Argento. Irina heard her mentor whisper, before glancing back to Irina then back to the exorcist. No, I haven't, and she fainted from exhaustion. The exorcist's expression fell as he explained, while in transit, we were attacked by various monsters. The Holy Maiden, bless her heart, tried to heal one of my teammates. He balled up his fists. They were caught off guard by a demon in the tree that grabbed them both. Irina watched as Griselda's expression darkened. Irina, we're now on a rescue mission. The woman turned back to her, grabbing her wrist where the transformed Excalibur mimic rested. Do not let your guard down. Do not wander off. The woman was treating her like a child. As if the nun could read Irina's train of thought, the saint continued but with a softer expression, this is your first real mission, young Shidu. It wasn't supposed to be. I understand. The nun drew up Irina's other hand and clasped them in her tight grasp. I hope you do. There was a warm feeling that encompassed the girl's body. She didn't know it at the time, but it was a bit of her holy energy. It would allow Griselda to find her and shield her without being present if necessary. We will still meet up with young Hayato and young Korda in an hour if we don't find them on our search. Irina noticed the lack of worry for the two as the woman turned to face the exorcist. Though they could probably handle themselves, the girl thought. How big was your squad? 7. The man's face hardened as he paused. 5 of them were killed in the ambush. Irina's eyes widened and her hands balled up at the revelation. This was why she couldn't be weak. She could be one of those people. Or she could be a burden and get someone killed. Amen. In her thoughts, she missed most of Griselda's prayer until feeling the power in her final word. Young Shidu, prepare yourself. We're moving out. Why yes. Her words trailed off, seeing her mentor's gaze. In her stupor, she didn't see the glow around her wavering. The woman's voice softened, remembering Irina's sensitivity to more intense emotions. Focus on me and breathe, Irina. The girl was still rather innocent, unlike Zenobia. The woman would have to constantly remind herself of that. Yes, instructor. There was a pause as the girl struggled to pool her faith for a few seconds. I'm ready. And so, they returned on their trek towards the church. Though, they moved slower than initially did as they held back for the tired exorcist. Please watch over the sister for me, young Shidu. The girl nodded, vigorously, not trusting her voice as she still heaved for breath. While she wasn't sprinting at full speed, she did run for a good 15 minutes or so. I'll be talking with the monk, okay. The exorcist was a monk in this case. Huff. Why yes, instru. Please just call me Sister Korda, Irina. Said girl flinched at her name. Sorry. The brunette struggled to remain refined in her speech. I'm just used to my old mentor. She trailed off, realizing her failure. It's quite alright, young Shidu. The warrior nun trainee missed the soft smile in her direction. We shouldn't take long, so please wait patiently. As she opened the door, she paused. I'll be back with some water. Thank you, Sister Korda. There was a whisper that lingered in the air as the woman left. Irina couldn't exactly make out what it was, but it helped soothe her. Slowly, her breathing returned to normal. No longer required to focus on restabilizing herself, her fixation was on her thoughts as there was just silence and nothing of interest in the near colorless, bare room. Immediately, her initial thoughts were of the exorcist's missing group. She shook her head just as quickly. Instead, she chose to focus on the things she learned. Promptly, she was hit with a wave of temptation to draw upon the power humming within her. All she learned in just a meager guidance was invaluable and electrifying. Hopefully, it had helped to close the divide between her and Zenobia. Her and Issei, turning her gaze to her budding chest where her hands rested, she closed her shining eyes to the temptation. Her new mentor, Griselda, was already giving her freedoms she had never experienced before. Those were already much more than she could ask for. There was no need to betray the expectations set upon her. There was no need to lie anymore, to herself or others. I didn't completely realize it back then because of Sister Griselda, but... She trailed off in thought while her roughened hands trembled as they reached up from her throbbing chest to cover her mouth. Her vision blurred from unshed. Bliss and relief filled her. It was akin to the feeling of openly singing to the nightly air. She would finally learn to control herself. All the while, the bracelet against her chin glowed. You will die. Then, so be it. Then, you leave me no choice. With a cool cup in her hands, Irina cringed as she heard the exorcist, monk and her mentor argue right outside the door. It wasn't especially loud in the silent church. However, the dispute between them was in heated whispers and thick with conflicting emotions that it kept disrupting her attempts to distract herself. Her mentor was trying to be a voice of stern reasoning that fell upon the ears of wicked vengeance. A wave of pressure descended on the silent church. I order you to stand down. And no, despite not being in the conversation, the girl bit her lip, nervously. The exorcist was disobeying a direct order from one of the church's few living saints. He would be excommunicated and be placed on a capture-on-site order. She didn't know what would happen after that. Irina knew Griselda only wanted him to be here where it would be safe. It was enough that a few others had already perished. Leave then. Do not show your face here again. I won't show this mercy again. There was some shuffling before the retreating monk's steps grew increasingly quieter. so focused on listening onto the conversation. The clicking of the door as it shut behind the saint made the warrior nun trainee flinch harshly in surprise. "Sorry, I overheard." Losing confidence in her unrefined and rushed words immediately, Irina trailed off, fighting herself whether she should or shouldn't look into her mentor's eyes. In her indecisiveness, the girl missed the way Grisela's eyes softened. The woman had decided against muting the conversation to open ears, otherwise Irina's, with a simple miracle. Instead, Irina would be shown some of the darker but more tamed interactions between people. While it wasn't her intention for training for today and for any time soon, the girl was too innocent, having only gained her spot far earlier than most from sheer physical ability and her father's underground legacy. The girl was all too likely to work from emotion rather than duty. While that may be due to her gift, she'd have to grow out of it. Although, it wasn't as if she was betting on the monk of all exorcists to disobey her. If anything, she hoped for the opposite. The sister kneeled down next to the girl on her chair. "I'm sorry as well, young Shidu." She matched gazes with the girl. People can have connections so strong that they surpass their duty. "I mentioned being close to your comrades, did I not?" The girl gave a small yes. "Nevertheless, your duty must come above all else." The saint could feel the conflict within the young girl. That was to be expected and very thoroughly understood. That would be enough of that though, she thought as she closed her eyes. May he be redeemed. For men aren't evil, only misguided. In the spirit of vengeance. Amen. Irina's own invocation came late as she hadn't expected Grisela to suddenly get into prayer. Amen. Again, her presence demanded Irina look into her eyes. However, do not lose your focus, your drive, your faith. She paused to let that sink in. Right now, your duty, the woman tapped Irina's chest where her heart lay beneath, is to get strong so something like this fate won't befall you. Do you understand? Seeing the girl's beautifully innocent eyes widen, the mentor fought down her smile. Yes, yes, Sister Quarta. Erg. It was then the nun they found in the forest groaned. Hearing it, Irina grabbed the extra cup that Grisela brought earlier alongside the pitcher of ice water that came with it. As the girl poured out the liquid, the physically exhausted nun raised her upper body, taking in the familiar environment. Only to nearly fall off the bed, seeing a serious Grisela at her bedside. SS Sister Quarta. Her voice came out hoarse. Fortunately, Irina passed her the cold glass. In her panic to address the pinnacle of modern nuns, the bedridden women practically inhaled the water. "Sis, calm down, Sister Francine." Smoothly, Grisela cut off the other nun. "I got the information from the excommunicated exorcist, Harold." There was a gasp, and no. Her mind made connections for the worse. "Do not fret. He did not betray you or the rest of your squad, Sister Francine. He simply disobeyed a direct order to stay put." The saint closed her eyes. "I understand his spirit of vengeance. Nonetheless, that isn't the correct course of action. It may be an unjust punishment, but that was the rules that governed him. He knew them well and probably more than most as a monk. I am sorry. There's nothing to apologize for, sister." The taller woman blinked as a thought crossed her mind. "Could I ask something of you?" "Of course, Sister Quarta. I'm sorry to ask when you're still so exhausted, but could you keep watch over the church? I'll set down some wards as well in." Grisela gestured to Irina, "our absence to assist you." "I can do it," the sister said firmly, moving to slip out of the simple bed. Again, the woman was caught as she fell. This time it was by Irina's. "Sorry, dear." She hadn't expected her legs to give away so suddenly, though she was taken aback from Irina's youthful appearance. The girl seemed to be a year or two too early to be a disciple. Zenobia, of course, was an exception. The girl couldn't help but exclaim, "It's okay." She hid her embarrassment at slipping up in her tone well, moving to help the woman to her feet. The weakened sister couldn't help but smile at her brightness. She pulled away from Irina's arms. Managing to stand, albeit shakily, she faced Grisela. "I can do it," she repeated. The saint simply nodded before reiterating, "We'll return in 30 minutes, an hour at most. I need to collect the rest of my disciples. I'll be waiting patiently. Hopefully, the father comes back as well." The weakened woman placed her hands together and closed her eyes. "As we leave from this place, may the mercy and grace of our Lord be yours to share. May the life you live be the gift you give, so that all may know he cares. Amen. Please rest a little longer as I set the wards, Sister Francine." Grisela's tone left no arguments open, so the other woman of the room sat down on the chair to her side. "Excuse me." Grisela's movements were as swift as they were silent. In the void of her commanding presence, the lull of quietness reigned. The nun knew not of Irina's name nor the nature of her companionship. Irina, on the other hand, was used to speaking very little, if at all, while in the attendance of adults outside of her parents. "I'm sorry for putting you through this so early in your training, dear," the woman decided on, speaking honestly. The apology caught the girl off guard as the trainee blinked repeatedly before she could gather a response. "It's all right, Sister Francine." At it, the nun hummed in thought. "You're an exorcist in training." "A warrior nun," the girl corrected. "Oh, I used to be one." The woman trailed off in thought. After a few seconds, she returned her attention back to the girl who was trying much too hard to be stoic. "I'm a rather unique case. I was a warrior nun who turned into a nun." Her eyes sparkled as she remembered the main reasons she converted, to teach in her high pressure. "Do you have any questions? Don't afraid to say what's on your mind." Her expression may have looked welcoming, but suddenly the woman gained a fierce aura as well. The nun wouldn't take a no or nothing, only her true thoughts. With that in mind, Irina gathered her voice in confidence. How are you so? Unfazed even though the exorcist was so angry. The nun's smile widened before she responded with, what a good question, dear. She set her palms up and open towards Irina. Come closer. Irina moved to stand in front of her, catching the nod of the woman's head. It was a hint to place her hands atop them. In doing so, the girl noticed how rough the past warrior nun's hands really were. Getting over that revelation, the younger girl noticed how calm her pulse was as well. I can't afford to get riled up anymore. Becoming a nun really helped me to control my emotions and get my pressure to a safe spot. Seeing the question in Irina's gaze, she answered, grasping the chestnut-haired girl's hands. It's not something you need to worry about, dear. There was a knock before the door opened to reveal Griselda, who said, time to set out. Remember, go seek Gabriel. Yup. There was relative silence as he raced through the afternoon sky, until Diedrag spoke up once more. I've been busy fixing our connection. Apparently, one major problem is that you haven't completely matured yet. Maybe it has to do with your angelic physiology. I see. Thank you for your hard work. A soft knocking against Issei's bedroom door, prompting a flinch from the boy. Issei. With that as a warning, the seraph entered the room. The boy gave her a weak smile, hiding his left arm behind him. Sorry, Gabriel. I thought I could control it. The strongest woman of heaven took in the situation. Everything was in disarray. His bed was broken, and the various fabrics in pieces in every place her eyes fell on. She could only tilt her head in confusion, control it. The boy bit his lip, unable to meet her concerned eyes. In my arm. Against the admittedly better judgment of Diedrag, Issei decided to go home immediately. However, he was stubborn and wanted to deal with it by his lonesome. His left arm throbbed in the grasp of his right as he pulled it before himself for Gabriel to see. At the reveal, the strongest female angel's senses were instantly overloaded with the sheer amount of draconic energy. It just went to show just how much he could hold back. He wasn't quite at the point where he could maintain, filter, and drain it safely. Oh no, his dragon arm completely slipped her certainly airheaded and bustling mind. I'm so sorry. She pulled him into her arms, ignoring the searing feeling of his arm between them. You poor child. She cooed him to a deep slumber, combing her fingers through his shoulder-length hair. The last thing the boy could remember was thinking that he was no longer a kid. It made him grasp her tightly in his stubbornness. The almost archangel mistook it for pain, and to a degree, she wasn't wrong. It was then a green orb appeared on Issei's reddening arm. There was a wry smile atop her cherry-red lips before she said, he wants to be fully self-sufficient. When the Red Dragon Emperor didn't deny or refute the observation and silence was the answer, she pulled him closer to herself before picking him up. Her right arm held him by the back of his knees, her other held his upper body by his small back. One day these shoulders would be wide and sturdy. She almost couldn't wait. One day, I fear, he might leave heaven completely. They knew she wasn't worried about him falling. With Diedrag's flowing through his arm as a conduit, it was nearly impossible. However, if his arm was severed from him he would fall immediately. Father's children at Issei's age shouldn't have to bear such sins. Gabrielle closed her eyes. A silent prayer, while quiet in her mind, seemed to overwhelm the room, drenching the house and the surrounding area with sacred holy energy. Thankfully, Masaru had the foresight to set up a ward to completely void any energies from leaking away outside the property. Nevertheless, that armless scenario was quite unlikely with how strong he had and would become. It wouldn't stop her from fretting though. While not as headstrong as he once was, he was still young, naive, and bound to make more than a few mistakes. In her opinion, leaving heaven would be one of them. Gabrielle's mouth flew open, but the ancient dragon cut her off. There was a loud yawn. I'm going to sleep too. Watch over him for me. Despite the fact that the dragon couldn't actually see her, she nodded. Time to sleep, huh? Suddenly, she too felt tired as a wave of fatigue slammed into her. Anyone would if they didn't sleep for a few weeks. She assumed so at least. Her sense of duty was the only thing keeping her standing. With father gone, the leftover seraphs had to pick up the system piece by piece with the utmost care for the rest of the angels to sort and manage the very basic tasks. Even then, everything was held by a thread. They knew next to nothing about actually working the system. The only seraph who knew vanished not long after the death of their father. Father's thoughts were silent in her mind as it has been for the past few hundred years or so. However, she glanced down to his chest. There, a tattoo of a Joker card smiled back at her. This would be their salvation. Her sweat, hopes, and dreams were poured into it. Her suddenly compressed aura flickered darkly around her. A moment later, she shook her head. It wasn't like her to think like that, nor would it do her or anyone any good. And so, she shoved the thoughts away as she opened a portal to her room in heaven. She needed this sleep as well. If it just so happened to help Issei, then that was all the more reason. Issei's body floated down onto the unbelievably soft bed as Gabrielle reached out. At the same time, a red wispy energy slowly seeped into existence. Most of it surrounded Issei as shown by the deeper red around him. It was his energy after all. However, unlike the other times they slept together, the red haze was especially dense. It would be a lot of work to collect. It wouldn't be something she could do as she laid beside him. That wasn't considering the densely packed energy sticking itself to his arm. There was beginning to form dragon scales around his arm that hung off the side of the bed. Seraph drew close to the source of the red haze. As she did so, it got harder and harder to stand. Thankfully, she wasn't going to do much of that, she thought while kneeling onto the soft, cloud-like flooring. Holding his left hand between both of hers, she closed her eyes and started praying. The tips of her hair, which were curled into hearts, waved out as her many wings unfurled themselves, following her blinding halo. With just the release of her sacred limiter, most of the red haze was gone, eradicated by her divine motherly aura. However, the red scales were still developing at an increasing rate. Gabrielle felt herself grow sad at the fact that the system without Father meant she was unable to help others as well as she once could. However, she wouldn't let it stop her from helping everyone one step at a time. Not even Michael could stop her from sneaking off and casting a few miracles here and there. Although right now, it would be Issei at the receiving end, she thought with a sad smile. It pained Issei to know he needed help. It pained her to know she failed to teach him such an important lesson. It was more than okay to seek and accept assistance. FCK, and therefore, I purify. FCK. Instead of eliminating the thick red energy in its entirety, it quickly swirled into a ball in the palm of her trembling left hand. Following that, her other hand summoned a portal and fished out a transparent cube. She then forced the ball into the cube. It flashed red as it absorbed the energy. With that done, she set the transparent cube back through the portal with care. Through the whole ordeal, the radiance of her halo became weaker and weaker. She was both tired in spirit, mind, and body. Her 12 wings felt heavy as they helped her onto the bed. With just one thought, she wrapped her arms around Issei and fell asleep. Good night,